Hello and welcome back to Don't Lift Off. My name is Anthony Dunn, and if you haven't seen any of my videos already, I'm a motor racing instructor, coach, former racing driver, well currently former anyway, and automotive trainer. So today we're going to be meeting an old friend of mine, Rob Garofall. So Rob and I first met at Silverstone in the late 1990s, worked together for a number of years, actually raced together at Nurburgring 24 hours in a Caterham of all things. And then Rob and I also raced against each other in sports prototypes, so I'm sure we'll have a few stories from there. And then Rob went on to race further in prototype sports cars. I think he became LMP3 champion. And nowadays, in between renting out premium motorhomes, so he has a motorhome rental company, silverstonerv.com, and which he rents these extremely large and very luxurious motorhomes to half of the F1 grid, which is really, really cool. But in between that, something even cooler is he has become an F1 driver. Now, it's not a F1 driver in a traditional sense. What he does is looks after McLaren's Heritage fleet from the driving perspective. So if there's a McLaren that's been shaken down, so an Ayrton Senna, Emerson Fittipaldi, Niki Lauda, or even Lewis Hamilton championship winning cars, Rob is the man who shakes it down, or primarily the man who shakes it down. So it's a really, really cool job. I'm really, really looking forward to seeing Rob again today. And learning all about, I suppose, some of the insights, some of the experiences he's got with that, and sharing, I suppose, some of our mutual stories. So, hope you enjoy the episode, and in the meantime, remember, don't lift off. Some shit out there. Yeah. Who's that? Right, should be it. Right. These are new, by the way.
It looks very professional.
Yeah, it looks
posh.
it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know when you first get like a racing suit and it's like, and you look at yourself in the mirror.
Yes.
Oh, that looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it does. It all looks the part.
Yeah.
Very good.
Bullshit baffles brains. Fucking hell.
Well, that's our entire lives, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it is, yeah. I love so you said you started, you were a car salesperson in Dunstable.
Well, you straight from school?
Oh, I don't know. See, I seem to remember you saying you'd done. In fact, I think someone came to Silverstone who knew you, who'd worked with you, and I think they said I used to work with him at Dunstable or something.
Well, I left school at 16, which was not a problem. My father and mother are both very academic. My father went to Oxford on a sports scholarship, so we got sport in the family, football and cricket on my dad's side. And but I wasn't daft at school. I just didn't, I wanted to do other things. So I wasn't a bad person. I didn't get in trouble. I just wanted to crack on. So at 16, I was out the door and I got a job at Trimoco in Dunstable. In the parts department, actually. And it was an RS dealer. It was when the Escort Sierra Cosworths and things had come out, so it was brilliant. At lunchtime, the mechanics would have to go and road test.
Of course you would,
the cars.
How many of those RS got shunted?
So off we went to the pack horse for lunch in a Cosworth that belonged to somebody else. But that was, But I was 16. It was all right. But very quickly, I realised that school was fantastic. You're with your mates every day, and it's fun. You have a lot of holidays, you have a lot of breaks, and you can bumble on through, and it's brilliant. Whereas work, a job where people actually expect you to do something, was, as I say, a huge shock. So I lasted 6 months before I was sacked for being useless, which is fair enough. And I was, I think I was karting already at that point, or I might have been racing a bit.
You had a background in pro cars, didn't you?
That's right. Yeah.
Where did you used to race?
Well, that started off by accident. So racing's never in my family. I didn't know I could race. No, that was it. Yeah, so I left Ford's and then went to work for a company called the Motorist Centre, which is like a Halfords, but a smaller version of it at the time. They had 14 shops around Bedfordshire, Buckinghamshire sort of area. And that was better. I enjoyed that more. It was customer facing and I liked chatting to people. So that was all right. I lasted there about 4 years, I think. But they opened up a place called Magna Carta, which was a indoor karting venue in Milton Keynes. I think that's where the IKEA is now, in Milton Keynes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But at the time they opened this, and this is when indoor karting was just starting out. I think Track 1 in Uxbridge was one of the first. But
so was Daytona there? What sort of year was that then?
Daytona was in Shepherd's Bush at the time. They weren't at Milton Keynes. That was the James Hunt racing.
James Hunt thing, wasn't it? Yeah. I just remember the old pavilion, and my mum, when we used to go shopping in Milton Keynes, my mum saying that's James Hunt's place. Yeah,
I think it broke James Hunt. From what I understand.
I think several things had a go at breaking James Hunt, not least himself. I think.
Yes, I think he put a lot of money into it and didn't get anything back out. But I don't know the full story. So, so the Motorist Centre opened this indoor kart centre, and a guy called, I can't remember his name now, Martin Gilbert, who was a karter, worked for the Motorist Centre, went over to run it, and we went over there because it was there, and I was all right at it. I could do okay, and they had these open events at the end of each month, and I'd sort of win a few of those. And funnily enough, Dave Clark, a name you come up in your podcast previously, he also went there, and I got to meet Dave, and we had some good old races, and it was a lot of fun. I did all right.
Was he a local lad then as well?
Yeah, Dave was in Milton Keynes as well.
Yeah.
So then we ended up with this little group of us that went there a lot, and it was quite good fun, and we thought, right, well, we need to tour around and we need to try some other circuits. And one of the ones we went to was Kart World in Andover, run by a guy called Paul Bowler, who was racing these pro karts, which were basically a grown-up version of an indoor kart, the same as an indoor kart, but 2 Honda engines.
Okay. So at Milton Keynes you were running just the single engine ones?
Single engine indoor karts, yeah. But this pro-karting was sort of outdoor, twin-engine pro karts, cheap to run. The 2-stroke karts at the time, we were 3-hour engines and what have you, and carbs, special carbs. Whereas a pro kart, it's a pair of generator engines you can pitch up and off you go. Yeah. And so I did that. Cartwell were running a team, and I think I had a bit of inheritance or something from my grandmother. Not a lot of money, but enough to kick things off, and off we went. So I did a few years of that with in these pro karts, and ended up winning the championship, which was reasonably big at that point because it was in its early days. It was backed by Honda, so there was quite a bit of hype. It was a national championship, and so we went all around the country, and 60 odd kart grids, ABC finals. And,
no way.
Yeah, so it was quite good.
So what years are we talking about? Sorry, you might have already said and I wasn't listening, but mid-90s, something like that?
Mid-90s, I'd say.
Yeah, karting was just such a big thing then. I didn't realise pro karts was such a big thing as well.
They were massive then, but I think because it was very affordable.
Yeah.
And
what would be the budget for a year of doing that then?
£5,000.
£5,000, yeah.
Nothing. It was a set of tyres at each round and an entry fee. Engines with the generator engines. You just replace the valve springs at the end of each race, and off you went. It was.
You just go round and round
yourself, and so for me to at that point fund myself, I'd done okay, and there was a company called Kart Pro Stratos, which were one of the big chassis manufacturers at the time. I don't think they exist anymore. Stratos, they did a lot of gearbox karts as well at the time. Right. But Stratos were a decent chassis, and because I was doing all right, they said, right, well, we'll give you a chassis and you do the rest. And so I got a free kart effectively, and then I ran a few other karts to fund mine, if you like. Okay. So I'd take them all around in a van and had a bit of an easy up, and And I'd prep them at the week, at home, and then have someone come along with us to look after them on the.
So there's an entrepreneurial sort of spirit right from the start, because I never did that. We were always doing kind of family run thing.
Well, because it was never in the family racing, there was no support, I suppose. It was. I didn't know I was any good at it. It just developed, and so in order to carry on with something that you're passionate about, you have to find a way.
Yeah.
And that was the way, and actually, I said to you before we came in here about little events through your life that dictate your path and who you meet and how you go. So one of those, through this Pro-Karting, one of the chaps that came along and had a bit of a go was a guy called Crichton Brown, who was a director of McLaren at the time.
Okay, yes.
And he was head of the F1 road car project at that point, when it was just kicking off. So
when it was just the McLaren F1, is that?
That's it. Yeah,
right,
yeah, just before they went to Le Mans. So he had a few goes in a kart that I ran and got on well with him, and then he got us along to have a mooch around the F1 road car line at McLaren and a run down the flight line at Greenham Common when they were doing a bit of testing and stuff. So, but anyway, that's by the by.
Yeah.
Just people you meet. And actually, that car that I went down the flight line in, K5 MCL, was the fifth pre-production car, last pre-production F1, which is now sitting on the boulevard at McLaren.
No way.
So when I walk past that car, I know
you've got the memories there.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and some photos as well.
Yeah.
But so yeah, going back to the karting. So that funded me in karting. And again, one of the other guys I ran was a guy called Clive Bowen, who saw a little spark of something, I guess, and he liked racing, he liked cars, so he said, well, look, I'll buy a Formula Ford and you can have a drive of it and we'll see how we go. So he bought an RF82 Van Diemen Formula Ford 2000, same cars that Senna drove in period.
Yeah.
And that was it, and off we went. I think the first race I did was at Mallory, and it was damp. I think qualified 9th or 10th and finished about the same.
Yeah.
And that was the first race, And then the second one was at not Castle Combe. What's the Cadwell? Cadwell.
Yeah.
That's it.
Do you know, I never raced at Cadwell. I've done loads of track days around there. It's a proper circuit.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, you know what? The day I tested at Cadwell, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but your ex-wife was there in a single-seater, I think it was Monoposto something or other.
Right, yeah. Well, that would have been 96, 97, 98, because she did Formula Vauxhall 94, 95, Monoposto 96, 97, 98, won the championship 3 years running.
So she was there with that, and we were testing, and so I was sort of following her around. I just remember her being there.
I should say the name Amanda Whittaker at this point.
Sorry, I couldn't remember. But I remember she was your ex-wife. So we had a day's testing, which was great because I didn't have that at Mallory, and felt pretty comfortable in the car, and it came to qualifying, and I put it on pole, which was a bit of a surprise, to the point where when it came to the race, I had no idea what to do.
Yeah.
You've got these green flag laps and everything else, and I'm sat on the front, and I think, well, I don't know, what happens now? Green flag went, and off we went round, formed back up, and took the start. Nicholas Pearson was next to me, I think, and I was a little bit slack off the line, ended up second to him into the first corner, and it's pretty tight round Cadwell, and I finished second, but I got the fastest lap of the race and the lap record, which I believe still stands today.
That's it, yeah.
Probably because they've never been back.
yeah.
But yeah, so that was it. So you had 2 races in Formula Ford, and then I think something happened, and I didn't drive that car again. But by now I'd realised that I was, seriously a racing driver. I'd done 2 races.
You were God's gift to motor racing by that point.
Absolutely, and I'd realised that real work wasn't the way ahead. It was difficult, and as I said earlier, being at school with your mates was fantastic. And I heard about these instructing jobs at Silverstone. So
how did you get to hear about that?
Well, again, because of the karting, someone had mentioned there was a job going at the karting centre at Silverstone,
Okay.
which was in the hangar, which is now the museum.
Yes, yeah.
So I'd phoned them up to see if there was a job there, and as it turned out, there wasn't. But whoever answered the phone said, "Oh, you want to speak to the racing school?" And because they're always after people. So I thought, well, I've done 2 races. I'm fully qualified to be a racing instructor. I'll give that a go. So I phoned Silverstone and probably blagged a bit, I expect, and next thing I was up there sitting in the back seat of a Peugeot 306 whilst one of the real instructors was taking a guest round, listening to the spiel and thinking, yeah, this looks all right, this is something I could do. And so, but again, you've got to remember this is before people were tested and before you had to go through lots of courses to do these
Well, the
things.
very fact that this actually kind of reminds me when I think the first time I met you, actually. So the very fact that you could get in the back seat of a car to start off with around a racing track, because that's just a not done thing anymore, is it, right?
Yeah.
So I remember, so what sort of year was it when you started then?
That must have been late 90s.
Late 90s. It would have been before me, so I reckon maybe probably 96, 97. So I started, I reckon, October 97. But the main thing that I remember with you was... again, sat in the back with you, instructor. Well, get Rob's experience. He'll take you around, and you had a lovely old lady who. This is on the old Southern circuit, and I remember. So I'm strapped in the back, junior instructor. I'd done like a year's worth of motor racing. Oh, actually, no, I'd done 2 years actually. At that point. Not particularly
clearly
nowhere near the sharp end, but
based on my 2 races.
And I remember coming down to the old Abbey chicane. And clearly you'd been working there. Must have been working there for a few days because it was just the way that you kind of nonchalantly. She went down to Abbey and then braked at half the pressure that she really needed to brake for that corner. So I'm in the back there, just tensing up at the back, and you go, "Oh well, you've missed the braking area. We're all gonna die." And I'm in the back thinking, "You're fucking right. I think we are."
I think you got a bit numb to it after a while. You just knew it would be all right.
We're all going to die.
Yeah. But so no, got the job there, and this is the whole school thing. It was brilliant because then you're back with your mates every day, doing things you love, and just enjoying life. It was such a busy place at that time, as you know from working there.
Yeah.
And the people, I think you brushed over this a bit with Verge as well. You look at the people that we were working with at the time, which went on to massive things. Darren Turner, Darren Manning, Dan Weldon, Justin Wilson, Andy Prio. You can reel off all of these names that went on to do amazing things in motorsport.
Was Plato still there around that sort of time?
Plato finished just before I maybe did a couple of days with him.
Yeah,
before,
I think we must have started at a similar sort of time then, actually.
I think he just about got the touring car job with Williams. Around about that time, so he was on his way, and I think David Coulthard was a little bit before as well. But this is we again talked a little bit about this before being in here. This is a period where I think it's different today. People in racing who were racing in the early stages of their careers, Formula Ford at that time, which was pretty big, Formula Renault. Stig. Ben Collins?
Ben was working there.
The only difference with
I'd like to speak to him actually.
Yeah, he'd be interesting.
Yeah.
But the only difference I think with Ben and the rest of us is we all turned up in £300 pieces of rubbish, and Ben turned up in his Toyota Supra.
Yes. Yeah.
But people, all of us kids at that time had to work. We had to earn some money.
Yeah.
So you've got people that were going on to brilliant things and brilliant careers, which still had to go and earn their £95 a day for doing, auto test and single seater at Silverstone.
Yeah.
So you were with such an amazing group of people, and I think as a driver, when you're trying to move through racing yourself, just that constant every day being in a car, whether it's doing an auto test or out on the circuit in a 306 Peugeot or whatever job you were allocated, you were driving, you were on a track, and you were.
How much does that accelerate your understanding of dynamics of vehicles, of level that people are operating at, and you become relaxed with the environment, don't you?
Yeah.
That was the thing. Yeah. That was the big eureka moment for me. Really, was you've gone in and you kind of this for me, I was a bit of a, tightly knit ball of wool, really. And, when you're working with the likes of your Darren Mannings and your Darren Turners and, whoever, Michael Verges and
Peter
whatever.
Dumbrek.
Pete Dumbrek.
Yeah. I got fined a £5 sitting in the passenger seat in a Peugeot going around the perimeter road with him. Paul O'Brien pulled us over, Pob. And, fined us a £5 for going too fast.
Amazing.
Peter was driving. I wasn't even driving. I still got fined a £5. Yeah.
I've got a good story from those boys. I won't go into the full detail of why they were doing this day, but they came along to do a day at Bedford Autodrome, and Barfy was running the day. It was a Caterham day at Bedford, and Dumbfuck and Fuckstick, as they were affectionately known as, came along, where they were Works DTM drivers at the time, so German touring car drivers, and they got like. Let's just say they had to do that day to tick a few boxes in certain
corporate world.
Correct, yeah. And they turned out. So at the time, I think they still do it at Bedford. You'd have a marshal there doing a noise test before you even allowed in the circuit. Really, it's kind of you go around the perimeter road and then you stop and do a noise test. Except for they both turn up in their full AMG spec, whatever they were, like twin turbo, God knows what road cars, and just thought it was a good idea for the noise test to do a rolling burnout. So both of them turn up, they do this rolling burnout, and then so the marshal is just on the radio. I can't remember if I actually told this. I can't remember. I told this story so many times, and. Anyway, so the marshal is running around trying to find these guys at Bedford, and they managed to redirect this marshal into this hospitality area, and they said, yeah, he's down at the end there. He's down at the in the room just at the end there, and so marshal storms in, bursts open, you, and so I'm stood there getting changed. So I'm literally in my kegs. It's like, have you been doing rolling burnout in the noise test? I'm like, you what, mate?
Yeah.
So, that was...
But there's so many stories of little adventures and things that happen like that through our time doing what we do.
Well, you're looking for opportunities every single day, aren't you?
Yeah. So, anyway, that was Silverstone. Where did we get?
Well, I tell you what. Talking of Silverstone, actually, it will take us to. So you sent me some photos, and I was sharing some photos. That takes us quite nicely. Apologies. So the fact that we're putting someone's private car out onto YouTube. So apologies if this is your own private car.
You know what? You probably remember there was two Escort Cosworths. There was a blue one, dark blue one, and the white one.
Yeah.
The dark blue one, I think, was probably the better car. But that was a lot of fun. You could go down the hangar straight. I got to a point at Silverstone. I was very lucky. I was doing hot rides quite a lot, which is brilliant because no one else is driving you, and you're in control of your own destiny. But that Cosworth, Neil Cunningham. I went out with Neil Cunningham first of all in that car. He was just unbelievable. He could pitch that car in backwards everywhere, and his car control and everything was incredible. This again talking about learning and things with your peers.
Yeah.
So I went out with Gus a few times, and then I got put on the job as well. And you could go down the hangar straight, and that thing absolutely balls out 110 miles an hour. It's all it would do. Get to Stowe, down to third, chuck it in. You wind the lock on, it's four-wheel drive, smash the throttle, tyre smoke would billow over the roof of the car, you'd have the window open, they'd suck the smoke into the car, and
yes.
Your customers are wondering
Don't
what's
forget
going next.
to flash the headlights to the boys
at the
on
boys
the inside of Stowe Apron.
Yeah,
that was the party
exactly.
trick, wasn't it?
That was it.
Flash your lights whilst you're waving.
And out you went the other side, and off you went. But that car was brilliant until a Ford day.
I know the story you're going to... and I'm hoping to have this guest in over the next couple of months with a bit of luck. Yeah. But go on, tell it anyway.
Ford Day, which meant that Ford needed to bring a Ford Superstar to drive the car because, we obviously not worthy or good enough. And so Anthony Reid was there on behalf of Ford. He was driving Ford touring car at the time. It was a big Ford day. And so he was driving the Cosworth doing hot rides.
Cheers, really. We won't mention your name. just.
No one watches this anyway. It's all right.
They actually don't really at the moment.
So Anthony, he was sliding around the circuit, everything good, but he was also pitching the car into the pit lane at just in front of where the BRDC is now. It used to be quite. Was
this when it was the bike chicane? Was that? I'm just trying to think of why it would have ended up in the said tank slapper.
This is in the pit lane. This isn't even on the circuit. Yeah. This is in the pit lane. So the pit lane used to sort of S-bend a bit in front of the where the BRDC is now. So he was pitching it in there, and then apparently he had an ABS failure.
I thought it was the Steve Deeks fuel surge, actually.
No, Steve's fuel surge
fast
ABS failure was. I thought it was exit Stowe.
No, it's fast fail. It's fast fail. It's on the old conveyor.
Yeah, we'll come back to that in a minute, Deeksy.
Cheers,
Steve. So he modified the car quite heavily on the inside of the pit lane. Coming into the old pits, and that was Rest in Peace Blue Cosworth, which was a real shame. Jamie Hunter was another one that was really good in that car.
I was just going to say, actually, I remember Jamie, rest in peace, bless his soul. Yeah. I remember him saying that it was like Reedy crashing the car that he got married in, because it was the car that he first met you in, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I actually went over to the garages which were underneath the grandstands at Beckett's with Jamie after that, and the car was sat in there looking fairly sorry for itself, and we both put a little cup of dust into the passenger seat, just dust, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and that was it. That was the death of the Blue Cosworth. But what a great car that was. But we had the white one as well, which is like the picture, slightly different on the front end, I think. But,
yeah.
Not quite as good a car, I think. But again, happy memories. I got sacked for my first. I got sacked several times at Silverstone. My first sacking involved a white.
Is this the sill?
This is the sill. This is the still. It's the sill, and Steve Warburton. Who's still working at Silverstone now.
Yeah.
That's a life sentence. But Warby, good old boy, I like him. So I still talk to him a lot. But yeah, I was on rides, and I think Steve was due to have his first day on rides the following day or something. And this is 8:30 in the morning, so I said to Steve, "Come with me. I'll show you how it's done."
You're going to check the cones, aren't you, Rob?
Sorry, check the cones.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
And we checked them. So
you checked that they weren't standing anymore.
Yeah. Well, the problem is at that time and age, you shouldn't be sent out to do these sort of jobs like hot rides, because you're full of ego and clearly the best ever. And so off I went with Steve, and day hadn't even started. We're heading down towards Stowe. According to Steve, I pitched it in from about the bridge.
You started doing your Scandi flick at the exit of bridge. Yeah.
Flick. That was another thing on the corporate days, wasn't it? The Scandinavian flick isn't actually a pornographic movie.
Yes.
But yeah, pitched it in a little bit early, and they ran cones around just to
for the cone. Because you couldn't see your entrance to.
Well, it was the pit lane entrance, wasn't it, for the corporate days at the end of the hangar straight. So there was a line of cones sat out there. Well, we hit those sideways on, and pinged all of them straight out across the road, and headed literally backwards into Stowe, not in any form of control at this point, and sort of across the grass a bit as well, and. Came to a stop, everything was fine, except we both looked up and there was a sill of the Cosworth spinning like a helicopter blade in the middle of the track. And so I said to Steve, look, come on, I'll get the door open, we'll get the sill. So wrong way up the track, got the sill, got it in the car, and headed straight back up to the wash bay. And got to the wash bay, and I was like, come on in, Steve, right, I'll get on the pressure washer, you go and find Steve Page, the mechanic, let's try and recover this situation. And so I'm literally on the pressure washer as Andy O'Dowd, who was chief in charge of the day, walked out. Well, Warby, to his credit, ducked, disappeared and fucked off and left me holding the baby.
Of course.
And so there I was with a Cosworth covered in mud and a sill missing, and so that was my first sacking. And which was a shame. But anyway, a few days later, I think I'd managed to get back in, and or had my reprimand, and was doing rides in a 306 Peugeot on the Stowe circuit.
Oh, they were so good, the R306s, weren't they?
A lot of fun.
my
GTI
God.
6s. Yeah.
Is this the other Warby incident?
This is again the second Warby incident. Yeah,
I remember this day.
Yeah. So,
I remember you not being very happy about it.
well, I bailed him out again. This is the problem. So, yeah, so we're doing hot rides.
It was a very boggy, boggy grass, wasn't it?
It was the wrong time of year. Yeah. But yeah, so Steve had passed me going into North, which obviously meant I needed to repass him going into West because he had a slow exit and I didn't. Bear in mind we've got customers on board. Well, I say customers, ballast really. So yeah, I threw it up the inside of Steve into West. He went wide. And then as we're heading down to the S's, he just came straight across to take the line, leaving me nowhere to go other than straight across the grass,
Yes.
which would have been okay if it wasn't February or something, and a complete bog, and well, a bow wave came over the front of the car, and by the time it had stopped, well, you couldn't open the doors because it was that buried in the mud.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I was sacked again. and Steve walked away.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah. I remember stood on the inside of the barriers there, looking across. It's like, what's that Peugeot parked over there?
In the middle of the field, yeah.
Middle of nowhere.
I maybe shouldn't talk about this now with the jobs that I do now.
Well, it's kind of part and parcel of the learning process, though, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of what it's best off making your fuck ups out of the limelight if you can. Not that we're particularly good at doing that, actually.
Well, I mean, again, just going back briefly to some of your previous guests. So, Verge, I remember chasing Verge after a corporate day. We had these big Grand Prix challenge days. I'm sure you remember 10 event days.
Yeah.
Masses of people. And so that meant 10 team leaders driving minibuses, which was us, taking the guests around to their different activities. And then at the end of the day was a Grand Prix circuit tour, if you like, with 10 instructors in 10 minibuses with all of their guests on board. And so off we went, and I do remember Verge being in front of me. But because we'd been using so much of the circuit, they divided the circuit in two. So there was metal barriers across the circuit. So you had the national circuit, if you like, and then the southern circuit.
Yeah.
They barriered across. But they'd forgotten to take the barriers down for our Grand Prix circuit tour at the end. So I'm following Verge, and obviously we're lit in the minibuses. It's a race, as you know. And we came up to the first set of barriers, and, quick thinking, Verge just dived to the left, straight through the gravel trap, so I followed him, around the metal barriers. You had to keep your foot pinned, otherwise you were going to sink.
Don't lift off.
Don't lift off. But we made it, carried on down the hangar straight. But then, obviously, at the other side of the circuit, again, there's a set of metal barriers across the track to divide the two circuits off. And I think this would have been before the circuit was changed. This would have been when we went through Bridge and up into Priory and what have you. But so we're coming down towards the Abbey chicane, which would have been a left then and a right to head down towards Bridge, and metal barriers across there. So Verge goes to the grass on the right this time, and I'm in the tow, so I followed him. Well, I just remember seeing him hit this dip in the grass, and the back of the minibus, it must have been a foot off of the ground, and then bouncing side to side as it landed. And his guests, they're just like rag dolls in the cab. But again, all good. All
Well, it was stoked up a bit by Steve Deeks at the start of the corporate day. Just as you were walking out with your 20 guests, as you were walking out the Jimmy Brownson, it was like, and here we have the first activity of the day, the minibus race. Like, game on. They stopped saying that after a while, didn't they?
Yeah. They realised, several wing mirrors and what have you later. Didn't you take the side out of one?
Not a minibus. That was one of the few things I didn't crash. I took a wing mirror off a Lotus Elise. That was a Blackbird. Mm-hmm. Chris Ward's not watching this, is he? Yes, It's a blackbird on the exit. Yeah. It wasn't a post on the exit of the Abbey chicane at all. Yeah.
I mean, it makes it sound as if all we were doing was hooning around. We did actually work quite hard. And
I mean, there were long days, weren't there? You know, you'd be on track at 8:45 and you wouldn't be off until, well, as the timetable was like 20 to 7, wasn't it? 6:40, wasn't it?
Horrific, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if you're on Peugeots.
Yeah.
You'd be, 9 rotations of 2 people?
Yeah.
4 laps, then 5 laps.
And you'd get through both your customers so you could do 2 demo laps.
Yeah.
So you do your once through Stowe. So you could do your lob through Stowe.
Yeah. Can we talk about Ray Grimes?
That's an amazing... Is this the Toppy story?
Well...
Which one?
Which one? There's several Toppy stories. There's a Toppy story with Nature Boy, Brian Svensson.
Oh, yes. One. Yeah.
But the Ray story, again, doing these little 2-lap demos at the end, I came across Ray, well, we all came across Ray, who was on the side. His car is on the side in the gravel trap.
Was it raining? Was this?
It was, yeah. There was a puddle.
I didn't realise there was someone actually saw that.
Yeah,
I always thought he was like the last one back to the pits. So you actually saw the remnants of that?
Well, what I saw was Ray's car on its side in the gravel trap.
No way.
So I stopped and all I could see was Ray. If you can picture the scene, by now he's got the window down, so he's still in the car and the car's on its side. But the window's down, so he's got his feet through the window on the floor with his hand on the side of the car, trying to lift it back up onto its wheels, and eventually got it back over. And the next thing you saw was Ray in the pits with his jumper, his work jumper, rubbing the side of the car to try and get rid of the evidence.
I was on that day too, and it was really wet, wasn't it? And that's why they red flagged it.
Yeah.
And I've recalled this story so many times, I can't remember, so I apologise if I've already done this on the podcast, but I don't think I have. But we came in, we're all in the cabin, it's absolutely tipping down with rain outside, and he was following Toppy Seriella. So he's following Toppy. So Toppy had gone through Ireland, and there used to flood Ireland, didn't it? Used to just a big puddle on the apex. Toppy had gone through there, bit of a moment. Ray had gone through there, bigger moment. But I just remember Toppy driving back into the pits. I didn't realise there's anyone else following him, but Toppy coming back into the cabin, because we were all like huddled up in the cabin trying to keep dry, and Toppy's like, I'll try and do a crappy Scandinavian accent, have all the Peugeots come back in? Because I went into... Sorry, it's a really shit accent. I went into Ireland, there was a Peugeot behind me. I came out of Ireland, there was no Peugeot. And it's just that was Grimesy, but when he rocked it, we're stealing his thunder actually, because this is probably Ray's story to tell. But I remember when he rocked it, he said he ended up on the customer's lap when he'd rocked it, because he's rocking it from the driver's seat. So
you're right there. Over. Bless him. He's a good lad. They all are. Yeah.
That corner was renamed so many different names over the year. Yeah.
Edge, first of all.
Malcolm Edge,
Edge, Kelly Jane Wells.
Before that, it was Wilson. Justin Wilson. It was renamed Wilson. Yeah. Apparently.
Yeah. No, he did. Yeah, I was there on that day. I remember that. Yeah.
That was before my time.
Yeah. Kelly Jane Wells.
Henderson. After Dave Henderson.
Yeah.
Verco, it was. I didn't quite count with Verco because his was. I seem to think he had enough at Beckett's. I think his was Beckett's, but we renamed it anyway.
It doesn't exist now, does it? That corner? Or
no.
Circuit.
I've got some video actually on. I think it's on my YouTube channel of driving a Lotus Elise, one of the supercharged Elises round there. Actually, some of the early GoPro stuff.
Yeah.
Big slide into.
Caterham ride car was good.
Proper car.
The black one, super light or whatever it was.
Yeah, I was talking to Verge about that. That was a
proper
motor. I suppose we should fast forward a little bit to. So you did Caterham's after you did.
Did 2 races.
I don't have any Caterham photos, unfortunately.
Oh, that's all right. So as I say, by then I've done 2 races. I'm clearly an expert. And Arrow Star Racing raced Caterham's, and they needed a driver coach for a day at Goodwood, I think it was. Dangerous place. And so I'd done a couple of days coaching for them, and they had a lot of customers in their team, in their race team, and needed a coach for their customers. And so with my 2 races of experience, I thought that was probably the job for me. And so I'd race a road sport in the Caterham series and use the data to help their team of clients, customers. So that got me. So I started, I think, halfway through the season with them, and you had Thomas Jakovic in the other day. So it was the same year that Thomas was in the road sports, and Dave Clark and what have you, and who's the pet shop chap? You said you were talking about him the other day. We were talking about him upstairs.
Not Spur.
No. The fella that
Taylor.
ended up on, the chap that ended up on top of the barrier.
Ross Bargraves.
Ross Bargraves. Sorry, Ross. Sorry.
Lovely.
Yeah,
I love Ross. He was a real lovely fella.
Yeah. So one of that actual race at Coombe, I was in the middle of that pack, and Ross fired off to the left, and we all carried on. And I think I was 5th or 6th place. Thomas was in the mix there somewhere. And
it wasn't the car that hit that car, just to be clear.
No. Well, I can't say whether Thomas did or didn't. I don't know. You're in the middle of all of that. You're worrying about yourself. So, but there was a yellow flag through that section for quite a few laps afterwards. I do remember, and we were getting close towards the end of the race. And I thought, right, we're going to have to do something here. So, as soon as I'd gone past the incident, I pulled out and went past, I think, about 4 or 5 cars. And went straight up to 2nd place behind Dave Clark, and crossed the line in 2nd, and thought, great, no problem. And next thing I know, I've been protested for overtaking under yellow by Thomas and I think 3 or 4 other people that I nipped past, and ended up in the steward's room, and lots of negotiation and chat, and anyway, I got away with it, and finished 2nd. Thomas phoned me up. I remember it very clearly. Phoned me up the next day to give me a bollocking about overtaking under yellow and how unfair it was, and everything else. But so that was really the first time I met Tom. But then our paths crossed a little bit in Caterham's, and then, as you said, with him, he went on to race in Europe, and we, in fact, you did the race with us, the 24.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. I remember. So Nurburgring 24. So we were racing together at. We were working together at Brands, and I reckon it was like Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday before the race. And I can't remember who we were working for. Can you remember? Tell us from your perspective.
Leading up to that, so I raced the Caterhams with Aerostar, and then that came to an end. But I'd done enough in that to be worthy of a drive, if you like. And there was a new team that had just started up, a guy called Gerald Webb, GWR Racing, and he needed someone same sort of thing, to drive a car and then coach his customers. And we'd moved on into Superlights Caterhams at this point, which are the top tier with slick tyres and a bit more power, and had a good year in that, actually. In fact, I missed the first 2 races. We started off in road sports, but Gerald was pretty new to it, and he was running the car, and he'd taken a seal off of the engine to replace a oil pressure sensor or something. And so did the 2nd race, finished the race, got scrutineered, and this seal was missing, which meant you got disqualified from the race and minus 20 points or something. So at this point, it's like, well, this is, pointless to continue. So he then got a Superlight. So we started 2 races in the Superlight Championship. Missed the first 2 races because we were in the road sport. And I think ended up finishing 2nd in the championship. Won 3 races at the back end of the year. Bart Hayden was in it at that point, who went on to run Le Mans cars and things. I can't... Howard Redhouse was another one. Some good guys. But anyway, so Gerald wanted to take a Caterham to the Nurburgring, to the 24-hour. So we'd done a few of these. I think it was a Vidal Cup or something that Thomas was racing in as well.
Well, like VLN, precursor, is it to VLN?
Yeah. So all based around the Nordschleife. And but he wanted to do the 24-hour, so he built this car It was a Caterham, basically, with, I don't know, did it have F3000 wheels on it? Or
Correct.
Bonkers?
It was... So for those old enough to remember, remember the old Hamlet at cigar advert
Yes.
with the Carlos Fandango Mini with the wheel arches. It was like my first time. I was like, what the fuck? It's got these wheel arches with extra wheel arches on
That's
them.
it, yeah, wheel arch and a half for these enormous slicks.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, the car was a hell of a thing. And he was convinced he was going to sell drives, and so, but he didn't. So I think literally about 3 or 4 days before, he said, "Look, you know, we got an entry. The car's there. We haven't got any drivers. So, you know, who do you know?" I said, "Well, no one that's got any money." Clearly.
Yeah.
He said, "Well, all right. Who do you know that hasn't got any money?" And so one of the phone calls was Robin Liddell, and one was yourself, and and so that was it. That was our 3-car team, and
400 quid.
Was it? I can't even remember.
400 quid and 50 quid to you.
Oh, that sounds fair enough. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial aspect.
Sounds cheap. I think I deserve
when you look back,
yeah.
when you look back at how expensive it would be to do. I mean, what's a budget to do N24 now? 100 grand?
It's got to be.
100 grand a driver? Something like it's going to be.
Yeah,
Something like
yeah, crazy money.
Yeah.
But so there we go. We pitched up for this 24-hour. I mean, I don't think you'd ever driven the circuit.
No, could you tell?
Can
you remember the opening laps?
Yeah, and what was it? About a 9.5 minute lap. We were on the Grand Prix circuit as well, weren't we? It was Grand Prix circuit.
Yeah.
Nordschleife.
Yeah, I was quick around the Grand Prix circuit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know what? That's the big thing I remember with that car. It was so fast around the twisty bits.
Yeah.
So much grip. But then as soon as you got on a straight, the M3s and the Vipers and the GT2 Porsches and things would just come whacking past you. But I do remember in the night, I remember several things I remember about being in the night. One was the barbecue smoke coming across the circuit, the smell of...
Yeah, because you'd smell it being an open-top car. I remember the same thing,
The English marshals all around the carousel, which kind of knew who you were. And the fact that this car, this Caterham, had the worst headlights in the world. So...
The interior dash lights were particularly good, though.
You got a good glare.
Just to contrast that, yeah.
But I do remember following, I think, something like a GT2 Porsche or something around the Nordschleife bit, and this is the bit where we were super strong, so fast in the twisty bits.
Yeah.
And coming up behind him and getting past him, and then all of a sudden I've got his, plethora of headlights straight into our little Caterham, which had a set of candles on the front, and just not being able to see a thing.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you're looking down and you're going across the grass.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, what a dangerous race that was.
Yeah.
Luckily enough, you blew the car up in the middle of the night and didn't have to get back in it.
Yes. I can't remember if I... did I mention... I can't... Basically, it involved me running... Once a properly big block in the big hole in the block, and running through a campsite, because I couldn't get it back because it was on the outside of the circuit and they weren't prepared to tow it because it was just dropping oil everywhere. So I hopped over the barriers with my helmet in my hand, full race suit, ran through a campsite, out onto the main road, down the main road, blanked my way past the security guard, through the grandstands, over the gantry and back into the back of the garages. And you remember you looking at us thinking, well, there's Dunny. Where's the car?
Well, you look like a fighter pilot.
Just covered in black shite.
Black, yeah. I think I was in bed at the time. I think you poked your head in and said the car's dead. So, okay. Went back to sleep. Didn't you and Robin go off for a coffee or something? Or
I can't remember. I remember we were leading at one point. We were leading the class at one point, though, weren't we? I mean, we were three, once I got up to speed finally, because I was still trying to think of the Nordschleife, looking from the top-down maps that I had from the Nurburgring, from the BMW racing school printouts that I'd got, which was absolutely useless. But yeah, there was none of this learning on Gran Turismo first.
No, it didn't exist then, did it?
No.
Yeah. I think if I went back there now, I wouldn't have a clue. I don't think I could remember it.
Well, I've done quite a few days since then. Obviously, I've been over there with Verge a few times in the Radicals, and I went over there with my friend Stu Ratcliffe again. So I've probably been over there about a dozen times. So I do know it quite well. I can't name the corners, but I do know it pretty well now. But I remember at the time, even after that, I remember So Stu Ratcliffe, I went over there in his, he had 996, 911, and he knew the circuit better than I did, even though I'd done the Nurburgring 24, because he'd learnt it on Gran Turismo.
Right.
And that was really the start of how, it obviously wasn't a sim back then, but it had a very, good representation of what the circuit looked like. And
you know what was coming.
Yeah, it's kind of the early days of sims. Yeah. And then, well, that kind of segue kind of leads us to... fast forward a few years then. So this was 2008, I'm wanting to say.
2007, I think that's 2007. So to fill the gap
No, that was 2008.
Is it?
Yeah. I think you did drive the car in 2007 though, but that particular picture is 2008.
Right, okay. So to fill the gap in the middle, did Caterham Superlights. Did okay, as I say, finished second in that with Gerald and his team. And then drove with Chris Cooper in Superlights after that. And one of the guys in the team is a chap called... bloody hell, terrible today.
Just today?
Oh, man. Peter. I raced Radicals with him anyway, 2002.
Oh, you mentioned his name earlier.
I did.
You're having a senior moment there.
So are you.
We'll spread that load, shall we?
But raced Radicals with him. He was a Caterham racer. He helped pull this Radical deal together. We won the championship in that. That was Pro Sports, which would have been 2002, I think.
Okay.
And
so was that a Radical in Pro Sports, or was that a Radical Championship?
That was a Radical Championship, and the car. So the Pro Sport was the 1300 Hayabusa engine.
Yeah.
Prior to the SR3. It was the chain-driven car.
Yes, sequential shift.
That's it.
They didn't tell you which gear you were in, so you had to count each time.
Yeah. And some cars you'd be forward for up, and some cars you'd be backwards for up, and depending on how they configured the little magluta.
Yes.
So, but great cars for the money. I mean, fantastic cars. So Pete Mangian.
Thank you.
Put the deal together.
Sorry, Pete.
Yeah. And had a terrific year with Pete. We won the championship. We won at Zolder, I think.
So that was when it was a semi-European, 1 or 2 rounds
it was
abroad?
I think it was Spa. Is it Zandvoort? No, Zolder. Yeah, Spa, Zolder. I think there was 3 or 4 European rounds. I can't remember the rest, but it's a long time ago. But we won. We didn't finish outside the top 4. We were just a good, solid.
I remember that
combination.
I remember that you were kind of off the radar, weren't you? But you just kept finishing, always somewhere near the sharp end. Yeah.
And so we won the championship, and towards the end of the year, and again, this is how things just happen and fall into place. My racing, as I was saying earlier, my racing path was purely dictated by the people I met and what they wanted to do. I was never in a position to pay to go racing. So luckily enough, I was reasonable enough at it that I managed to blag some drives, and one thing led to another. So through the Radicals, then towards the end of that year, I coached a chap called Simon Phillips, who had bought an SR3. He'd never raced before. It was his first race at Brands on the Indy circuit, and it was wet, and it was one of these meetings with a combination of different cars, club sports and clubman cars, and some of these Jades with massive engines that were incredibly fast. But it was a damp qualifying. So... and as I say, Simon had never raced. This was his first race. So I did the qualifying. And on the pit wall, the timing screen was a little bit delayed. So I'd finished my last lap, and it showed, I think, 6th, something like that, at the end of qualifying. And Simon, it's his first race, so I thought, well, 6th on the grid, we'll stick him in for the start, and then I'll do the second period of the race. What we hadn't realised until gridding up was because the pit lane... timer was delayed, we were on pole. So I thought we were 6. We thought we were 6 because when we came off the grid, that's what the timing screen said. No, we went back to check and get a timing sheet or anything. We just rolled the car down to the collecting area, and as we walked in, they pointed over there, and it was first place. So Simon, bless him, never raced This is his first race.
No way.
And
He's on pole.
And he's on pole. So,
yeah.
Bless him. So off he went. He got through the first corner and lost a few places, as you'd expect. And anyway, carried on. I can't remember what happened in the race. But he loved it. He enjoyed it. And so he said, right, well, I fancy a bit of this racing lark, and he bought a Norma Group CN prototype, which is basically the picture
right,
on there,
yeah.
which were a Mugen Honda engine, 2 litre. Basically an F3 car with bodywork. Absolutely fantastic car.
Yeah, that was a very good car.
They were
French
so good.
French design.
That's right, yeah.
Pre-carbon fibre. It wasn't carbon,
first
that
car,
was
the
it?
2007. So we had 2 cars. 2007. I think you're right. I think that's the 2008 car, which we ran in 8 and 9, and then Norma built a full carbon car.
Yeah.
I didn't drive that. I moved on.
But it was when it went to LMP3, it was always the Norma and the Ligier, which were the 2 main competitors, and they were seriously good, well-engineered, well-constructed cars, weren't they?
Oh, brilliant cars.
The only thing I let Norma down was the name.
Yeah,
exactly. From a British perspective, anyway.
Yeah, well, that Norma now is Duquesne. So that has changed. Yeah. But as a car, I mean, they were fantastic. And again, you talk about the people you meet. So through that period, we had a chap called Alan Mugglestone engineering us, and Alan was ex Formula One test team, I think, with BAR, and just incredible.
I think I remember reading his name from. Did he do like West Surrey Racing? I know he won like an F3 as well.
Yeah, he did a lot of
his
proper
reputation
things,
preceded him,
and he was fantastic. He really just knew the damping and dampers inside out, and
so he was on top of your dampers. And Nelly
was mechanicking the car, and he was absolutely, again, just fantastic. He was so thorough.
So you had Mugglestone as an engineer. I didn't realise that on that. So you had a proper engineer. Yeah. Okay.
So with a really good engineer and a really good mechanic prepping a really good car, it was easy. 2007 in the V series in Europe.
2008 or 7? Oh, no, because it became popular in 2007, didn't it?
Yeah, 2007. 2007, it was like a mini Le Mans series, because there was 60 car grids, all in France, with a mixture of prototypes, these 2 litre CM prototypes, and GT cars.
Yeah, that's it.
So massive grids. And big races, 4 hours, 6 hour, 12 hour was the big one at Magny-Cours. But our car was beautifully prepared, beautifully engineered, and when you've got a car that's really, really good, actually driving's pretty easy. So we had, I think, 7 out of 10 poles in the season. I think at Spa I was on pole by 1.7 seconds.
I think you undervalue what the job that you did. I mean, if you have a look, I've just got some of these. These are obviously from the same day. There is Charlie Hollings.
Yeah.
In the banana.
Pilbeam, is that Pilbeam?
Yeah, it's Pilbeam, yeah. It's quite a quick car, that, actually. Bit fragile.
Yeah.
That's,
in the
yeah.
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 But that's...
And of course.
Bryce.
Yeah, and
now,
Bryce.
He's probably one of the hardest people I've ever raced against. I mean, but...
I'm hoping to get Bryce. I'd love to get Bryce on the podcast just because he's an interesting character. I mean,
but again, this journey takes us. You talk about your peers and people you look up to. So, Bryce at this point obviously was at his peak, if you like, had gone, he'd passed, but he was a factory driver for Nissan, wasn't he, in Group C, and.
I remember him driving. I mean, he did F3. I think he was Flux's teammate in F3. He certainly did F3 around the same time as Flux. He did it in the 70s, and I think he was world kart champion. And he came back. Well, he came back when I was racing in 100C in 1995, and he came back to do karting. And he just turned up, and he was fast, really fast. And didn't look like he was fast. He looked like he was on bass guitar in AC/DC.
Yeah, and he was and by this point he wasn't slim anymore, but a bit like me.
Sorry.
But you know, but he was absolutely tenacious. I mean,
wily,
really smart.
Yeah,
I mean,
he was really good.
Absolutely amazing racer. I remember one race in particular at Dijon. I think I was nose to tail with Bryce for best part of 2 hours, and we'd lapped the field, you know, to third.
Yeah.
Absolutely, just nose to tail for that whole time.
I should say at this point, when I say you shouldn't undervalue yourself, I remember speaking to Bryce and him saying he didn't make many mistakes, and I think as a racing driver, that's an undervalued thing. It's so when you see the likes of Charles Leclerc, for instance, super fast driver, seems like a super nice guy, but has made mistakes. And I think it's a lot of that is maturity, but some drivers mature quicker than others. But, you know, and that's not to be undervalued as a driver, the consistency. And it probably stems, I don't know, you tell me, does it stem like from your karting background if you were doing endurance stuff? Because it's a different mentality, isn't it?
I think, to be honest, Anthony, I think it's for me, I never had any budget. You know, I couldn't afford to crash. You know, there was no money. You know, so it makes you make smart decisions. And the more experience you get, the better you are at smart decisions. You know, you just give yourself an option. You know, every situation you put yourself in, you give yourself an option. And you get to, and again, you know, of course you've got to drive the car, but if you've got a really good car, you know, one of the best cars in the field that's set up well, that's engineered well and mechanicked well, driving becomes easy because the equipment's there. You can be on pole very easily. And I've got to say that period was probably the period in my racing time where I was the most comfortable because the car was just fantastic.
Yeah, I remember you saying.
If you've got a fantastic car...
It's like putting on an old slipper.
It is. You just knew exactly what it was going to do all of the time. And then that frees up capacity to think about other things and racing and how am I going to pass him or what am I going to do to set this up to get through there. And because you're not thinking about the driving. The car's just so consistent, so solid.
I was the same in Radicals in 2007 because I was quite experienced with it by then. And then when I came back into Radicals like 2011, although it was an updated evolution of the car, it was just like, this just feels like normal. And I tell you what, if I went and drove one now, I'd still be, somewhere near the sharp end just because it just feels familiar and, you know.
Yeah, no, exactly. So that was a brilliant period. That was probably my favourite period. I think in the Sean Balfe.
Yeah. It just took
enough,
who's now putting an extension on your house.
Absolutely, yeah. But again, like yourself, my God, we'll come back to that. But you know, the people you meet, like yourself, you know, the people that I've known for the longest period in my life have come through motor racing. But Sean, I met Sean in 2003-ish. Maybe a bit before that, 'cause he raced Caterhams the year before me, so I think I'd already come across him. But I actually put a deal together for Sean to race. Sean was racing in British GT with a Mosler, and I found a teammate for him. I didn't have the budget for it. I'd love to have done it, but I didn't have the budget. But I found his teammate and.
Is he still racing now? I must admit, I don't really read Autosport. Yeah.
No, he's
British GT.
Yeah, British GT, I think, and with Garage 59.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I did see him. So they've gone back to McLaren's, right?
That's right. Yeah. I don't think he runs his own team anymore. Most of their racing was with their own team, but I think that's been put to bed now, and he's racing with Garage 59.
Yeah. Good guys. I still know quite a lot of the guys now from that time. So I couldn't resist.
Oh my word!
Where was?
I don't know. Stumpy.
So this is
you can't do that now, can you?
No, you can't. You can't do.
Oh Jesus Christ! Oh my word!
The dwarf racing drivers.
Yeah.
This was V2V launch at the Autosport show. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, Linda. I don't know that I knew you then, but I mean, obviously, I.
Yeah, sorry about that. We were just young and stupid.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So anyway, leading on from.
That was a good car. So, yeah, so V to V. Well, actually, this is interesting because it involves you, Anthony. So, the last year I did a V to V in the UK, it was supported by Sunoco. Anders Hildebrand, who supplied the fuel. And it was the first year of what was known as the Sunoco Challenge, I think. And the winner of the Sunoco Challenge won a drive in the 24-hour Daytona, Daytona prototype. And you gathered your points through whether you got pole position, fastest lap, race results. But it was across the board. So as V to V... we were one of the championships. Formula 3 was one of the championships.
Yep.
Radical was one of the championships. I think British GT might have been as well. And so there was this matrix of points awarded for various things, but across
number of finishers and podiums
across
and
the championship. So we'd done quite well. As I said earlier, the car was fantastic, and we were having a good time of it. So I was at the sharp end of this Sunoco Challenge, which hadn't really been on my radar until we were getting towards the back end of the year, and it looked like it might be something that could happen. So we came into the last race at Silverstone, and it was between myself, Daniel Ricciardo, who was in Formula 3 at the time, and Derek Johnson, who was racing a Radical. And I think all I needed to do was something like pole position and finish in the top three. With Simon, my teammate, and I'd put the car on pole, and I think Radicals were racing at the same day, but at a different circuit. So, you know, the chat had gone backwards and forwards because Derek Johnson was racing in Radicals.
with Stu Mosley, I think that was
right,
at the time, wasn't it? Yeah.
So put the car on pole, and it was all, looking pretty good, to be honest. Simon had done his stint, so that was fine. I was in the car now for the second half of the race, and literally all I had to do was drive it home. And the following day, I'd have been on a plane out to Florida.
Had you booked your tickets at this point? Or
well, no,
it was all paid for.
That was all paid for by Sunoco.
But you'd got your passport ready.
Yeah. I had everything ready. Everything was in place to literally finish that race, and it was the next day. We'd have been on a plane heading out to Florida. To test this Daytona prototype for the first time. So everything's looking great. It's all tickety-boo. And just with about half an hour of the race to go, the air compressor failed for the paddle shift, which meant the car stuck in a gear and had to pit. You couldn't drive the car around in, I don't know, whatever gear it was in, thirds, for example, for the rest of the race. So it came into the pits. They changed the air compressor, and by the time that's done and we're back out, well, that's it. The job's finished.
I remember that. That helped us to finish either second or third, I think, in the race.
I wasn't that worried about that. But this is, again, how things happen in life and how things change. So at that moment, the world's come to an end, because this is it. This is the chance to go out to America to drive a Daytona prototype. I'm pretty confident in my ability to jump in it and do a reasonable job, and that could open some doors to do some other things. So, but the door closed pretty sharply. So the guy that was running V2V UK at the time was a chap called Barry Gates. Now, if you flop back a couple of pictures, there we are. So, Anthony,
that's actually me driving,
you were driving with Barry, and I think you'd taken Barry from the start of his racing career prospects, whatever, from Radicals through to these Group CN prototypes, and coached him. And
it's that great colour scheme on that car, by the way. It's great livery, wasn't it? And they obviously carried it across to the P2 car.
Yeah, well, that was RLR, was it? Running the car at the time?
It was.
Yeah.
Reynolds, Longworth Racing.
That's right.
Yeah. A similar colour scheme. That must have been the period colour scheme now.
No, it isn't. That is RLR's scheme, but that car was previously the MG Lola, which was a similar colour scheme. But very close. But that is RLR's colour scheme. So you were racing with Barry. Well, Barry owns this car, or did at the time. And we were in the bar for the awards night for the V2V Championship that evening, and Barry came across, and he could obviously see I was pretty upset at just losing this prize. I think he felt sorry for me. He said, well, look, I've just bought this LMP2 car, and we're going to test it out in Guadix, I think. He said, that it's been a pretty rough day, just to make you smile. Do you fancy coming along and having a go? So, yeah, of course I did. So went out to Guadix and drove this car with Barry, and by the end of the day, he sort of offered me a drive in it with him. I think he was still racing the Ligier at the same time, so he may have bought this car for testing, but wanted to do another season in the Ligier. So I think we did a season in the Ligier together.
Yes, 2000 that would have been 2010 then.
Yeah, and then we did a couple of races at the back end of the European Le Mans series. We did Hungary, I think, and Silverstone maybe.
Right.
In the P2 car at the end of that year. But I do remember that being not a difficult conversation with you, but a conversation to say, look, Barry's offered me this.
I don't think we ever had a difficult conversation, actually. And I certainly, in terms of how you feel and how you think, so I certainly never felt any animosity about it, because you were just straight from the beginning about it. I felt a bit upset because of, I suppose, in a way, how it was done, and it came kind of out of the blue for me, because I was expecting to carry on racing and I thought I was doing a reasonable job. But I suppose it's what experience gives you, and what hindsight gives you, and it's kind of what makes you more mature. And you tend to, I mean, the fact that we're having this conversation now, you roll with the punches. And one door closes, another door opens, and from my point of view, I don't think I raced for a year or so after that, and then ended up racing a Lotus Elise with my pilot friend Stu Ratcliffe, and that led to quite a bit more racing thereafter. Yeah. And
But no, that was that. So again, from not winning the Sunoco Championship, led to racing a couple of seasons of P2 in European Le Mans Series, which was the highest level of racing I'd done to this point, and was quite serious stuff. And the car was mega. It was mega the first year, actually. It was the first year the car was current, and it ran the AER turbo engine, which was pretty good. And then the following year, there was a change of regs, and we didn't change chassis, but we put the Judd BMW engine in, and it wasn't anywhere near as good. And because it wasn't a current car, I think we carried a weight penalty as well. So the car wasn't that competitive, to the point actually where we started the year with myself, Barry, and Simon Phillips, and Simon sort of bailed out halfway through because the car wasn't particularly good, and Barry, I think, the ACO, we were lobbying for them to take some weight out the car, or to give us a chance, because it was 2 seconds off the pace.
Yeah.
But the ACO, or the ELMS, or organisers, or ALMS, or whatever it was at that period, said, well, look, we don't know who's driving the car. They don't know who I am. I'm not a known driver to them. So they're saying, well, how do we know that the car's not, absolutely bang on the pace, but your drivers just aren't, where they need to be. So Barry brought Warren Hughes in, who'd driven the car quite extensively previously, which for me was amazing, because Warren's one of these people at the time that's raced in British touring car, and was on the cusp of Formula One in his period, and was a works driver for MG, and just a bit of a superstar, really. So to bring Warren in was absolutely amazing. So for then, for me, I was pretty similar on lap time to Warren, which was great, because it meant, for me, it validated that I was getting out of the car what the car could do, but we were still 2 seconds off the pace. So the ACO just said, shrugged their shoulders and said, oh, well, never mind.
Right.
So end of 2011, that was it, really. There wasn't much point in carrying on. So this is a little bit later. So this is still with RLR. So again, I spent that period of time with RLR who were running the car in the Ligier and the LMP2. This would have been 2018.
Oh, okay, so that's quite a bit later then.
Quite a bit later. But
Right.
I'd raced previously with RLR in British GT with the University of Bolton.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah. Did you race in, what car was it? Was it a Ginetta they were racing?
In
Yeah.
GT4 with Anna Valenska.
Yeah.
So that was really good. So RLR moved into the university to do a course, basically a motorsport course, but a real life course, so a real race team in the university, and then with real mechanics running the cars, and then the students come in and see what's going along and accompany the car to the races. And they weren't really working on the car because they're not qualified, but they were there and in a real life situation. So because I'd driven for RLR for a few years, Nick got me the job with the university to drive for them in European Le Mans Series prior to this in the Ginetta LMP3 car, and also in British GT in the Ginetta, which was quite nice because it was paid. It was a regular wage, and you go in racing. So that lasted for a couple of years, but it kept me going with RLR.
Yeah,
and that led on to this. So this was funded, by a chap called.
Senior moment.
Again, I raced with Job van Utrecht. And excuse me. Oh man, it will come to me. But the chap that was funding the car, basically, he wanted a Le Mans entry. So at this period, I think I'd turned 45, but it meant I could downgrade to bronze on the driver grading.
Well, that's the key thing, isn't it?
Well, it is and it isn't. So I worked hard to get my driver grading down to bronze, which I managed based on age.
When you say you worked hard to get your driver grading, you've tried to throw it off a few times? You've just driven slowly for a few laps?
I just lobbied, basically. I just wrote in and said, look, I'm very old and just do this for fun.
Look at my hairline.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at these wrinkles.
Yeah. So, can I be bronze? And they said, yep, certainly. So I was then valuable because Job was the young kid, the superstar. John Ferrano was the money behind the whole thing. So John was a bronze. Job was our superstar, if you like, silver-rated driver.
Is that these three guys?
Yeah,
is that
it. Yeah, John on the left, Job in the middle. Job's racing P2 now. He's very, very quick. He's fantastic. Really good driver, and myself. But so I was valuable. It meant I could jump in the car, finish the race, do the last hour of every race, bring the car home, and go for the results. So the first race we won. I think we won 2 races. We were on the podium for others, but we were always in the mix. Job was fantastic. He was incredible. He was just so fast, and he'd normally start the race and get us out in front. We'd slip John in the middle. If he held his own, that was great, and then I'd jump in to finish, and I'm up against the other bronzes or not. It just worked. So we won the championship, European Le Mans Series, which got a Le Mans entry, which is what John was after, because he wanted to race in the 24-hour. But this is where I suffered a little bit from what you suffered from with Barry. I didn't go to Le Mans. John did.
Yeah.
But I'd done my job, to secure my part, to secure the title victory, which got the Le Mans entry.
Yeah.
But that did get me over the line for my BRDC membership. Which was
very good.
Fantastic.
So you are BRDC member.
Yeah, I'm very proud of it.
Yeah. It's a big thing. It's a big thing because the minimum criteria to get that is, you need to have done something.
Yeah, you got to have done a little bit, but that just scraped me over. So that was great. But I got to say, it's whilst it's fantastic to drive the car, if you're in that car as a bronze, which I didn't think about in advance, and it wouldn't have changed anything, I'd have still done it. But it means you get no tyres because you're not going to qualify the car. You're not going to be running on good tyres.
Yeah.
So you get no tyres. So you also then in testing get no time because it's all about John because he needs the time and he's paying the bills and it's his show. So and then Job needs the time on tyres to be ready for qualifying and what have you. So I'd gone from being the lead of a car, if you like, where you always get the tyres and you always get the low fuel load and you always get the opportunity to do, what the car's capable of, to being, the guy that gets nothing but is there to do a job to bring the car home. Yeah. And it kind of took all of the fun out of it. Yeah. To a degree. It became, when you haven't got the opportunity to put a lap time in, because it's not the job that you're there to do. Yeah. It's a different game.
So then it's becoming a job as towards, well, I suppose one of the changes of that may have brought you some benefit is the check on the ego, because this sport, it's a huge ego sport, isn't it? Let's face it. And it is for me. I spent, one of the things that my wife next door encouraged me to do is do more listening than talking. Not that I'm particularly that comes naturally, because I naturally want to talk about myself.
Don't we all?
But when it leads to some stuff that you did later, which we'll come on to, that probably helped you to a certain degree.
I think so. One thing you don't get as you get older is faster. That's guaranteed. Mm-hmm. You get smarter. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about it, and that for a while offsets the fact that you're not as quick as you might have been. Mm-hmm. But when you're used to being at the right end of things and, reasonably good at what you do, and then all of a sudden you're not there anymore, I think you either have... Racing, as you said, it is about ego. Whatever you say, it's about ego. Mm. And we all go racing because we want to win. Now, there is a large amount of people which want to go racing for the enjoyment of going racing and having a weekend away and driving the cars. And that's great. And that's fantastic. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that wasn't why I went racing. I went racing to win. Mm. And when you're not performing at that level, or you're not that person anymore, the enjoyment disappears. Now, I found myself towards the end of this season packing a bag to go racing and just thinking, well, I could be doing this or I could be doing that. And the excitement which had been there forever had sort of gone, really. So at the end of this year, 2018, we won the championship, which was amazing. But I had no desire to carry on.
Really?
No.
At the same time, though, and I'm going to come on to another part of what was going on in your life, if my screen allows me to do so, is you were doing this, which is your luxury motorhome hire. You tell me when you started doing this.
Well, this all kind of happened by accident to a degree. So when I was racing in the earlier days, I always had a motorhome. I much preferred staying at the track. I didn't like going back to hotels and having to get up early and then having nowhere to hang out during the day. So I always had a motorhome for myself, and like an American motorhome. And I'd take it to all the races, and it was great. Someone wanted to borrow it or hire it, and one thing led to another, and all of a sudden, we're starting to hire out motorhomes, and but it was never planned. It just happened, and over time that developed, and we ended up with a couple of F1 drivers hiring from us. And
what sort of year was this?
So this, I guess it would have all started... Well, there is a bit of a trigger point, so, which I don't want to go into too much, but there was a period where I had a little car dealership with one of the guys that I was involved with through racing, and it didn't end particularly well, and so I was a junior shareholder, if you like, by about 0.5%, and that was enough to be able to get me out the door, if you like. So that happened, which meant that from being in a pretty secure place with a little business going on and racing in the meantime, that overnight, that kind of stopped, and it was, well, okay, I've got to try and do something else. And so the motorhomes were already ticking along a little bit, and that just gave an impetus to push on with that a little bit. So that would have probably been 2014, something around there. And then, but the big thing that really progressed it was COVID. So where everyone else was locked down and doing nothing, COVID presented an opportunity for motorhomes, because if you needed an isolation unit, these worked well. And Formula One was one of the things which seemed to get back up. Before a lot
it's
of
kind of a bubble sport. They even attempted to start at the beginning of 2020, didn't they? And then Hamilton was like, what are we doing here? I'm not really sure we should be doing it. And then they just knocked it on the head. But they opened up the doors. So at the back end of that year, didn't they?
It did get going pretty quick. So there was this period, I'm sure everyone remembers, where the races were behind closed doors. Nobody was there. And the drivers all wanted to be in a motorhome. Now, they weren't scared about COVID. They're some of the fittest people, on the planet. So they're not worried about getting COVID. They're worried about missing a race and not scoring points. So the easiest way to isolate is to have a motorhome. You're not going to a hotel. No one else is with you. It can be sanitised. And so all of a sudden, for that period, we had pretty much half the grid, I'd say, in our motorhomes.
Talking of which, let's. Well, you'll know this website a little bit better than I. So what sort of stuff is? I mean, everything on here is sexy, I could see.
Well, again, this. So I couldn't do this all by myself. I mean, everything we own. It's all paid for. There's no finance, but there are other people involved. So again, through motor racing, I first met Martin Short. Probably 2003, when he was racing in British GT in the Mosler. He won't remember meeting me then, but I remember meeting him.
Yeah, similar sort of thing. I seem to remember meeting him through Barfy somehow, maybe him being in the background or some other stuff like that, yeah.
But Martin and his wife, Michelle, are just fantastic people. So Martin, I'm sure everyone knows who Martin is, but Martin has done one thing which I haven't done, which is race at Le Mans. In fact, he finished 4th overall at Le Mans with his own team. I mean, it's unheard of in the Pescarola. And his history prior to that, racing in Tuscans and British GT, and before that, I think
Rover Turbos.
Yeah. But all off his own back. Doing it himself with a family team. And taking on, these, huge manufacturers and doing a terrific
good job.
So I knew very much who Martin was, and I bumped into him at a BRDC Christmas dinner, I think.
Right.
We were on the same table, and he'd just sold his Delara to Gregor Fiskin for quite a decent amount of money. I won't say the amount because Gregor's probably trying to sell it, but a decent lump anyway. And I just sitting there, I said, well, look, this is sort of what we do. Do you fancy half a motorhome? And just over a lunch we sort of agreed that, and so the first one was
show us your sexiest one. What's the nicest on here?
The nicest one on there now is probably the Eurotech Whim top
left. Okay, yeah.
That's so Martin. So just to finish that off, Martin bought into one with us, and now he's got, I don't know, probably best part of half of the business. He owns half of the kit, and he's a terrific partner. But this one was built in Holland, so by a company called Eurotech. And it's like a little mini apartment, really.
Yeah.
It drops down on the ground, the wheels come out the back. It's a really trick bit of kit.
Wow. Oh yeah. I remember seeing the now you see the wheels
Yeah.
on the side. Wow.
Yeah, and
Good
so
God.
that was used by
Wow.
Charles Leclerc last season, amongst others. But
Amazing.
yeah, so they're called motorhomes, but really they're now
It's a home.
They're
It's a home from
they're
home.
little apartments. So the F1 drivers like them, and that one there, the Hopkins, Alex Capadia, is involved with that one with us.
Okay, yeah.
He owns half of that.
Yeah. Right, I raced against Alex in Radicals for a short period of time because he raced the Robin Mortimer's team at the time, and he raced the car that I was racing the year after, and then we ended up racing together. Real nice guy, I like Alex.
Yeah,
fast as well.
Yeah. He's still quite busy. I think still racing. Still doing.
Yeah, he was out with Keith Bisp's F2 car.
That's right.
He was
Yeah,
out winning in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he does quite a lot of shakedowns for one of the classic Formula One providers.
Oh
teams.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Alex, so actually now Alex and Martin and myself, we're all it's quite a good little bunch really. We spend a bit of time together in holidays as well, and so it's.
So if you're looking for a motorhome, if you're looking for I don't know whether you call it a motorhome. Basically, if you're looking for a house on wheels, SilverstoneRV.com. Come and see
not
Rob.
Just that, and we've got. If you go back to the fleet, we've
Oh
got
my goodness, what have we got?
We've got. If you scroll down a little bit further, we've got this more standard sort of American fifth wheels and what have you as well. So
okay.
We can cover everything.
Cover all sorts of aspects.
So
Yeah.
we do a lot in Formula One, a lot in European Le Mans series, and then British GT, Ferrari Challenge. So yeah, if you need a motorhome,
SilverstoneRV.com.
give us a shout.
There's your plug-in.
Perfect.
So that was going on in the background, and then some random stuff that you sent me. I'm not really actually sure whether it was meant to be sent for me, but what is this?
Oh right,
What?
yeah. So yes, this
What on earth?
So whilst I was racing with RLR,
I'm loving this lid down the bottom.
this was the most surreal day. So whilst I was racing with RLR, one of the
Shall I play this through while you're talking?
Yeah,
Talk us through it.
Yeah. I think this is a World War II machine gun of some description, but you get the idea. I mean, just an amazing. It's in America, near Knoxville. But one of the guys that I drove a couple of races with in a Corvette that Nick ran was this American chap, and he said, look, we have a shoot once a year, come on over. So Nick and I, packed our bags thinking, like play pitch and shoot, whatever. Off we go, and we turned up, and well, I mean that's one of the smaller guns, but you have honestly never seen anything like it. It was just incredible, There's no way in the world that you're going to take guns off of the Americans.
Oh my God!
There's
the shockwaves coming through.
Oh yeah. There's a bigger one than that.
Oh my God!
This one was pretty cool on the veranda. Yeah, just
Oh, is that a machine pistol?
Yeah, machine pistol, and then machine guns firing off everywhere, and
This is the sort of thing you see in Eastern Europe.
yeah. But you know what? How quickly you sort of become numb to it, and it becomes sort of almost normal.
Really?
Oh, this thing was incredible. I think this is an anti-aircraft gun.
Wow.
Ready? Yeah. You ready, Rob? I'm ready. On three.
Yeah. I mean,
Random stuff that you come across and end up doing.
But again, that was off of the back of racing, trip out to the state. That's Nick.
Yeah.
Yeah, firing a cannon. It was all normal stuff, really. Yeah.
Nice plug-in for RLR Msport there.
That's it, yeah. Well, Nick's sold now.
Has he?
Yeah, he sold
Oh.
at the beginning of last season. So
Okay.
Alan McGarrity's been running it, I think,
Oh.
last year, and but they won the championship again last year.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go.
Yep, more guns.
I think that's a 50 cal. Massive bullets.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. I've shot guns at driving ranges, but not quite as extreme as
No,
that.
This was fun. So this was again part of coaching, part of racing. You know you work, as you know, with manufacturers and things in the.
It's kind of how we got reacquainted, really, wasn't it? Through the Pure
Yeah.
program. So you were doing the Pure McLaren program
Yeah.
as an instructor come coach, and then I got kind
Yeah.
of involved back with it when it was kind of back end of when Tim Mullen and Andrew were running it, and then
So I got involved with that through Tim. Tim gave me a call right at the start when they were launching the 12C road car.
yeah, I also got that call at the same time, but that was in whenever it was, but it was all at
10, 11.
yeah, but it was all down at Goodwood, and the
That's
trouble is
right.
at the time I was living in County Durham, so I was just like, I can't really,
Yeah.
I can't really do this. A bit,
So no, there was only about 8 of us at the start, and did a lot of coaching, and through time I got more and more involved with McLaren on the road car side, and this was actually out in California. I did the driving for the launch film for the 600 LT.
Yeah.
And at this point, I don't know why they just put a lot of money into this particular film.
It's a very cool film. I've got it. I'll pick it up on YouTube. It's the
Yeah.
film, but talk us through,
So
through it first.
it was like a almost like a little Hollywood movie. So they had these ideas of the car starting the journey in a steel mine in it was an abandoned steel mine in California, and the car coming out of there and then driving through the sort of ghost town, the town that used to provide all of the people for the steel mine, and we did that at night, and then so this is the steel mine, these pictures, and then we went across to a racetrack called Chuckwalla,
Ooh.
which was again just a lot of fun. But the Lamborghini that you saw there it's got a gimbaled camera.
Yeah.
The idea is that it was
go back
quick
to
enough to sort of follow and shoot. The reality was it wasn't, because there's a huge amount of weight over the front of the car, and so it actually ended up taking shots, but static. The car was static. It just couldn't quite keep up.
I think sometimes you don't realise what's behind all of this. This is like the amount of setup that's required to get stuff.
I think one of the early shots was the Porsche with a Russian arm on it. And
Okay.
That was
Let's go back to that then.
cool.
Where are we?
So
I see. Yeah, cool.
So that part of the shoots, I was following that car around and drifting through some corners, and you had to kind of judge it, so you're just skimming across the camera to get that shot as
so it's almost precision driving as well. So you've got a combination of sliding, which is your competition stuff, and then precision as well. I've done a bit of precision stuff. It's a different discipline, and so you're combining the two there.
When you've got to sort of slide a car, but also be pinpoint accurate as well. That's kind of the skill, I guess.
And that's your auto testing.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's your auto testing, just on a bigger scale.
Yeah, totally. But that was they did kind of throw quite a lot at that. So that was.
Should we look at the advert?
Why not?
It's very cool. I remember seeing this at the time and thinking that's mega, and some decent skids.
Driven out to the borderlands, to a place beyond normal. Those who dare seek it out must face their fears.
I was in that tunnel for about 4 hours. It was hot.
And harness its untamed power. Are you ready?
Oh,
The edge
nice.
lies
Well, that
genius.
last corner
The edge is calling.
was pretty cool.
Mega.
So that last corner, the guys wanted. They kept saying, we want this big finish. We want this big finish. And I've been looking at this corner for a couple of days because it was a big old corner, and I thought, well, we'll have a go. I don't know, but it was a fourth gear entry, about 90 mile an hour, and shifting to fifth. Sort of halfway through the corner because you're just running out of revs. So and coming out the other side, I don't know, about 100, 110 probably, something like that. And they had the Porsche with the Russian arm down in the bottom of the corner to sort of pan round and follow the car. So I went through the first time and it was all right, and then went through the second time and it was probably a bit better. In fact, it was the second time that was the one that made the film. And then they said, right, one more shot, one more go. Had a third go, and on a third go, it delaminated the rear tyre and blew it out the side of the car. And, it was all fine. I mean, it didn't do any damage and didn't spin. It just delaminated.
It's just what you get when you're dealing with that extremity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was so cool. I mean, we just had as many tyres as we needed or wanted, and as much time but I mean, as a job, to go out to California and play in a car. I mean, at this point, you've got to remember as well, the car wasn't launched, so it was completely secret. So the car had been flown out in a box and got through customs, and at the track there was rangers around the perimeter. I didn't see them, but so they were telling me they were stationed around the perimeter with shotguns in case any drones were flying around or this sort of thing to prevent any pictures of the car coming out prior to the to the launch videos.
Wow.
So it was all sort of secret squirrel stuff as
Yeah.
well. But it was really one of those jobs that's just so cool to be involved.
Yeah, I remember seeing it. I remember it playing in the hospitality. I was thinking, that is sick.
Yeah.
But again, kind of coming back from where you learnt to do all this, it's from the auto testing, it's
definitely.
from the Escort Cosworths, it's from the
It's
cocking
from
about
playing.
of knocking down the cones and being prepared to do that on occasion.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
It's kind of like there's a really good book by a guy called Jordan Peterson called 12 Rules for Life, and one of the rules is don't interrupt kids when they're skateboarding, and it's because they're learning a skill, and it's kind of what we learned back then, and that it's a transferable skill. It's like you can get a car and you can drift a car, and it's just like doing a wheelie on a motorbike, isn't it? But
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably like anything. Once you've got over the fear, if you like, of putting a car into a drift, once it's there, it's actually very controllable and a very easy.
yeah.
It's just
Well, once you know how, once
Yeah.
you've messed it up 1,000 times,
Yeah,
and I've learnt how not to mess it up.
yeah. But no, you're right. It does. It goes back to Silverstone, Caterham's cones, and yeah. But no, that was a good little job. I'd quite like another one like that.
Well, I think you've got a reasonable job at the moment.
Well, yeah.
So, I tell you what, why don't we start on that? It's not a bad...
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, not a particularly high-res
MP4-8s.
image, but yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this and what you do. I've done a little intro kind of alluding to that. But what is this and what do you do? And
again, life, you go on this sort of journey and you never know what's going to happen, and one thing can lead to another. And a lot of things that have happened for me with racing, with business, with life is chance meetings and chance occasions. Now, I think quite a few people know that I'm test driver for McLaren Heritage, which is an amazing privilege and something which I don't take for granted in any way, shape or form. But for sure, how does a 52-year-old, bald, slightly overweight guy with no massive racing pedigree end up as a Formula One test driver for McLaren? Now, I've driven I don't know the exact number, but it's not far shy of 100 Formula One cars from the 60s through the 70s, 80s, 90s. We haven't done any of the Peugeots because there aren't any engines available for the Peugeot cars.
Oh, really? Interesting.
And then after that, all of the Mercedes cars from the Ilmor V10s, Mercedes V10s, through to the V8s, and more recently a hybrid car. So pretty much every iteration of F1 car for McLaren from the 60s through to now. So how does this happen? How does this amazing job and opportunity present itself? What do you have to do? Well, I was down to drive a 720 McLaren road car at Carfest South, Jodie Scheckter's farm. And I'd raced a Shadow DN9 for a guy in the Masters Series Formula One car.
Okay.
With a Cosworth DFE engine. So I had a little bit of experience with a DFE. And racing. So you've got to remember that McLaren Automotive and McLaren Racing at that point, very different companies.
Yeah.
They're very separate. There was no crossover between the two. But Racing were running the M23 for a demo at Carfest, which was the 1974 Emerson Fittipaldi Championship winning car. It's
Nice.
a very, very special car.
Yeah.
It normally sits on the boulevard at MTC. And on the Friday, they didn't have a driver. I think they were using Ollie Jarvis for the weekend, but whether he was on the sim or something, I don't know what the story was, but he couldn't be there for the Friday. And so I got asked, could I drive this car for this demo, which obviously, yeah, of course. I mean, it's a Formula One car and it's a McLaren and it's pretty special. So I was totally up for that, and I was there anyway with the 720 for automotive. And so, yep, no problem, love it. And then I got booked for it, and then I'd heard after that, no, it's sort of cancelled. They're not going to run the car. It's a very precious car. They don't know who you are. The guy running it's not completely comfortable, and quite right. It's a priceless bit of history. But I think there was a little bit of pressure put on, to say that the car needed to run, because it was down on the programme, for the event to have this demo. And the chap that was running the whole heritage programme, which was right in its infancy at this point, was a guy called Indy Lau. And Indy, as I say, I think was a little bit nervous because he didn't know who I was, and so it wasn't going to happen. And then got another call saying, no, it's got to happen. You're going to drive it. So fine, brilliant. So I got there, and I was a little bit nervous because I knew that there wasn't, Indy wasn't particularly keen on it, and it's never nice going into a situation where you're not completely sure that the people around you are kind of want you there and what have you. But Indy was brilliant. And I met him, and he talked me through the car, and he put me at ease, and I think I put him at ease as well. I'm not there to try and rag the thing or prove a point.
Yeah.
So we did the Friday couple of runs in the M23, and all went well. And by the end of the day, we both realised we were on the same page, and I think Indy realised that I'm a safe pair of hands, if you like. And so a couple of weeks went by. I did that, didn't think anything more of it. A couple of weeks went by, and I got a phone call from Indy saying, look, we need someone to shake down some cars. This heritage department's going to start growing. Race drivers are too busy. They've got their jobs to do, and we just need someone on a to call on. Would you be up for it? So I'm kind of thought for a millisecond, and it's like, yeah, of course I would.
Definitely.
What an amazing opportunity. So the second car that I drove for them was out in Bahrain, and it was a MP4-8 tag turbo, and so we flew out there. The McLaren team were there with Indy and the guys from Bosch that were running the electronics on the car. And I went out, did an install lap, and gears weren't great on the car. It was crunching a little bit, and I just couldn't find gears on the car. And I came in, and I did report it. But Neil Trundle was there as well, another legend of McLaren. And
So he'd been there, because I recognise that name from, I suppose, reading Autosport and stuff. He'd been there from the days of Ron Dennis and
yeah,
before,
exactly. Yeah, well, I think Ron started McLaren with Ron.
Right.
Way back at the start, and then went off to do something else, and then came back afterwards. But so Neil's been there from day dot. I mean, an absolute legend. In fact, all of the Heritage guys are. You know, Indy, who runs the department. I mean, he's his history with McLaren. He was Alain Prost's number one in his championship year. He went on to run the entire test team back when they were running. You know, testing every week. You know, Indy was there running that, and now he runs Heritage. So he's run all of these cars in period, and a lot of the mechanics that are there too ran cars in period. So when you're with these cars, you've got the stories, not just of the cars, which are incredible, but the stories that go with the cars from the people that ran them. So it's amazing. So anyway, went out to Bahrain. Wasn't great with the gears on this car. I did, as I say, came in, reported it, and I think they didn't know me that well at that point, and I think they thought maybe I'm not trying to, you know, get it in gear or push hard enough or whatever. So they sent me out again and again. I just couldn't get gears in the thing. Came back into the pits, and they just dropped the cluster out the back of the gearbox, and the dog rings were buggered basically. So, as I say, they didn't know me particularly. I didn't know them particularly, but I think there was a feeling that I'd done something wrong. I knew I hadn't, but in that situation, you know, you're driving the car, you know, everyone's looking at you. So that was the end of that. Car couldn't run again, and we were all in Bahrain, which is pretty disappointing. So we came back, and the gear cluster was sent back, and Neil put it all in the jig, and it turns out it was just miles out. It was never going to go into gear. And so it got, dog rings were replaced, and it was all jigged up and put back in, and then the car ran okay. But at that point, you know, I'm thinking, well, that's that, you know. I've done two cars. The second one's pretty broken. You know, that'll be that. But no, Indy called me up, and so the third time I drove cars. Bear in mind that these two cars are manual shift cars, 3-pedal, heel and toe. Pretty standard, really. So Indy phoned me up. He said, all right, got 3 cars at Snetterton, you know, on this date, see you there, sort of thing. So I pitched up and walked into the scrutineering bay, and there was a 2007 Lewis Vodafone Mercedes car, a 2007 Alonso Vodafone Mercedes, and a 2011 Jensen Button car, all sat in the scrutineering bay. And you know, you walk in and you look at them and you think, well, that's pretty special. You know, I guess they'll have someone here that will be, you know, driving them, and maybe I'll get shown around them or whatever. But no, I was the driver. So.
And so you're I'm guessing you're getting a bit of imposter syndrome at that point. You know, given that you know, I suppose your sort of humble beginnings in humble machinery, and you kind of, you know, in your words, you're kind of blagging your way into whatever you can, and then you find yourself, you've got an F1 team that's bought 3 of their finest cars there, and
No, and at this point, you know, with some of the other tests, with the red and white cars, they're a little bit more simple to run. But when you go up to these Mercedes cars, you've got to have the guys from Mercedes to run the engine side. You've got to have the chassis electronics guy from McLaren. You've got to have more mechanics. There's 3 cars there, so there's more people. So all of a sudden, there's a lot of people here, and a lot of people I don't know. And, you know, I'm walking around and they're looking at me thinking, surely not. And I'm looking at them thinking, I agree. and I don't know anyone. And I just, and there's a procedure with these Mercedes cars where now it's very comfortable, but at that point, I don't know what these procedures are. So they'll warm the cars up with the oil heaters and what have you initially, just to get the engines warmish by flowing the coolant through the car and through heat exchangers before they fire up. And they'll get to a point where they're ready to fire up. They'll then fire up with the Mercedes guys and the McLaren chassis guy on their perch with their laptops and a little pit rat thumb throttle to warm the car up. And so they'll fire up and they'll do that, and they'll be revving, and at this point, you know, I'm just thinking, I just don't know how I'm here or how this has happened. I'm pretty scared. And then once they've done that, they'll do a shift check on the car. So they'll manually pull the clutch, put it into first gear, release the clutch, and then control goes back to the bench, basically, where the McLaren guys will run through the gears, and you'll see the car going up through the gears, back down through the gears, and making sure everything's ready to run. And once that's done, then they'll bolt the wheels on, give you a nod, put the helmet on, in you get, and off we go. So, the nod was sent, put your helmet on, and I just got in the car and I'm looking out the scrutineering bay. And then once you're in, they'll fire up again just to bring the car back up to temperature before you go. But it's hand clutch, which I hadn't driven before.
Oh, right.
This was the first time. And it's a Formula One car, it's a McLaren.
Well, it's interesting, actually. I hope there'll be some people who are not into motorsport will end up watching this. And one of the things, if you watch, like, Richard Hammond trying to pull, the Renault F1 car out onto the Stowe circuit. Remember that little feature they did? And it's just like, yee-yum, yee-yum.
Yeah, well, when you with the hand clutch, it's a potentiometer, so there's no sort of mechanical connection between what's happening with your hand and the clutch and gearbox. It's all just a switch, basically, potentiometer. So you're so used to, with your leg, getting that feeling of a bite point and what have you, and with this you don't. But I'm sitting in this car and it's fired up and they're warming it up on the pit rat, and when it's warm, normally when I'm looking at the dash, about 100, 105 degrees is the point where the Mercedes engineer will look at my engineer, if you like, who's on the nose, and give the signal that, yeah, we're up to temp, everything's good. He'll then give a signal to remove the umbilical out the side of the car, and at that point, then the car becomes mine, or the driver's, control is given to the driver. And I just remember looking out at the pit lane at Snet, just thinking, well, if I can just get out of here, if I can get 30 yards, if I can just leave this scrutineering bay, I'll figure it out. I'll be all right. I just want to get out of here. And yeah, luckily enough, I did. And and that was 8 years ago. And as I say, now best part of 100 cars.
Well, let's look at some of the stuff that you sent me. I mean, it's amazing the number of
MP4-6s. So this is the period, talking about Indy now, and I've got to say now, from not knowing Indy at all at the first time I met him at Carfest, now Indy is a really, really close friend outside of McLaren. He's actually godfather to my daughter.
Amazing.
He is a fantastic guy. But the most, he is McLaren through and through. He's been there forever.
Yeah.
And he is meticulous with everything he does.
Yeah, the whole ethos ran through that company, or probably still does run through that company from the...
Yeah.
I suppose I remember, so sorry to interject, there was a friend of mine went for a pilot's job there, flying Ron, and Ron, he said, sat him down for a talk about the world according to Ron. This is the way we do things here. And it does take a special kind of, it's the same, to me, it's the same mentality as runs through the likes of Apple and something. It's like, right, this is the way we do things.
Absolutely.
Very process
very, very process driven, very precise. And so MP4-6, this is a period when Indy was running the test team, there was actually 11 chassis, MP4-6 chassis, because you've got the race cars, you've got the test cars, you've got the spares, T cars at this period. So actually through this period there's quite a lot of chassis for each year.
Are they all the same car, essentially?
I think they're all MP4-6s.
Wow.
Yeah, but as I say, there's 11 MP4-6 chassis in total.
Wow.
So that was a shakedown at Pembrey.
Shall we have a look at... I'm not sure if this is the same sort of period, but let's have a look at what you've given.
don't they sound lovely?
Do you know what I was going to ask, actually? You know, I've seen some of these historic, F1 cars run before. And how different is the engine from when it was in period in terms of settings that they use, in terms of revs they'll allow you to use, in terms of...
So this sort of period, the V10, the V12s in the Honda period, and then the Mercedes engines, really they'll just knock a couple of 1,000 RPM off of the top. So they're pretty similar to in period. Now I don't drive them anywhere near the full capacity.
Yeah, well, you're not really on a qualifying lap at Monaco, are you? And
No,
that's really not your
exactly.
job at that point.
The job is far from that, and so you're mechanically sympathetic. That's pretty cool. That's doing laps of the Woking Grand Prix around the lake at MTC for the Friends and Family Day, some demos. So I was driving MP4-8 there. Lando was driving the 1969 M7, and Oscar was driving an M26 James Hunt car. But yeah, so the cars are pretty close to spec. The only cars that are a little bit, I would say, harder to drive are the turbo era cars, because they were designed to drive at a level.
Yeah.
So the turbos and everything
Designed to last half an hour.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're trying to run them down here.
Yeah.
And they're not built for it, and they don't like it. So actually the turbo cars are the cars that are much more difficult to drive at a lower level, because they're just not built for it. They're not designed to be running at that level.
Yeah,
but
that's
these
interesting.
Cars, the V10s, the V12s, they're pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And one of the things actually with these cars is, this goes back to the early skill sets of racing Caterhams and whatever else, your heel and towing. It's a manual shift. The MP4-8 was the last car with a manual gear selector. That's a roll bar actually on the left there. The gear shifts on the right. You can't see it, but it's 3 pedals, so your right foot braking, heel and toe on your downshifts. And actually nowadays, your modern kids now, they're never going to experience that.
Heel and toe. It's the lost art of the heel and toe. Maybe we're the last generation. Well, I hope not, actually, because there is a lot of emotive enthusiasm, feeling towards historic cars. I mean, you can only look it's in Netflix at the moment with the Senna film, the recreation of his life, and that's bringing a whole new audience to that. And it's funny, actually. I was talking to my stepdaughter Jess, who's absolutely loves the like she messaged me, actually, have you seen this documentary? I was like, I can't bring myself to watch it.
Yeah.
I'm just a bit old school, but I will catch up with it at some point. But I mean, we should talk about this particular car, actually. So this is a car that was at Silverstone. That was the last time I'd seen you in the flesh, so to speak. But tell us about this car, because
this is a really, really
Oh,
special car. This is, there you are, a little tiny gear selector. This is MP, and the scrutineering sticker there, we'll come to that in a sec.
Yeah.
So this is MP4-5B. This was Ayrton Senna's car, and this is the car that he drove at the Suzuka Grand Prix and took Alain Prost out in Turn 1 to
The
win
famous
the World Championship.
Yeah.
And there you are, you can see the scrutineering sticker still in there from the Japanese Grand Prix.
Amazing.
And when you look at the side of the car, the tub, I don't think
Not sure if I've got any pictures. I thought I took one on the outside, but we'll come back to that one.
But you can see the repairs in the tub, because that car was brand new for that race. It was the first race that it had done. And,
in hindsight, that was a mistake.
and it got damaged, and so it was repaired, basically. And so now when you look at that car, when you're up close to it, you can see the repairs in the tub. And that's the car that Lewis drove recently in Brazil.
Yeah. So he drove that car.
It was that car. Yeah.
I remember seeing that repair, because you came up to me and said, "Come and have a look at this," and I was like, "Oh my god, is that the repair?"
It's things like that are real history. For people of our age, probably, that were watching Formula One then, and watching Ayrton and Nigel Mansell and what have you. So to be stood next to these cars and see, how real it is when you see that repair.
Hang on, how about driving the car?
Oh, man. I mean, as I said earlier, I am just incredibly privileged to do what I do. But it all happened by luck, all happened by chance. There's no formula to
Well,
have
you
got
do
there,
make your own luck. I'll
but,
challenge you on that somewhat. And as I said to you on the phone, I'll challenge you on that somewhat because I think you have made your own luck and it's something that you have a talent for and a skill for without probably realising it. It's anything in life is about relationships, right? And so what you're doing is building up a trust relationship in anything you're doing, and it's your commodity, particularly in a solo sport like that. It's your commodity, isn't it? And the fact that they trust you as a person and you've become a trustworthy person, and I think that's...
Yeah, I mean, of course, you've got to have that in your armoury, but you've got to get in the door at the start, and that was luck.
You're still pinching yourself now.
Yeah,
aren't you?
oh, absolutely. I mean, how can you not? How do I end up doing this? It's incredible, and it's not lost on me. I am just, yeah.
This is cool.
Yeah, this was really cool. So this was, I'll keep quiet for a second. This was an in-lap, actually.
How good does that sound?
Yeah. That's bonkers. That should be flat. I heard a downshift.
I know you got in. This is an in-lap.
Yeah. No, I think slow down from here on. Yeah, but that's is that MP4-8? I think so. 2010 car. That's a car that Lewis won in Turkey with.
Okay.
But this was at the British Grand Prix a few years back now, and it was being sold by auction. So my job was to drive it round, and it was actually being live auctioned whilst I was driving it round.
Oh, yeah, I remember this.
Yeah, so as I'm going round, I could see the big screens, and I could see...
Don't chunt now.
Just exactly. Like,
Everything to lose.
Yeah.
It's back to the old mantra of passenger rides. Everything to lose, nothing to
to
gain.
gain.
Everything to lose, nothing to gain.
Yeah, especially when you see the numbers rolling on the big screens every time you went round. And the guy that bought it was actually on the podium bidding at the time. But that was so to do that sort of at the British Grand Prix.
Yeah.
With a decent amount of people in the crowd, and not just that, because the car sounds so good. You could see the F1 teams as well. There's a big screen in the background.
Yeah.
So the more as we went, then you could see the auction on the screens. But
No pressure at all.
No.
It's a good on board shot actually.
Yeah, well, that camera ended up in the car with me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it ended up in my lap.
So it's still it's still Silverstone, right?
Yeah. This is basically the same footage you showed,
okay.
Just the onboard camera.
From on board, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're running on the inside of Stowe, are you there?
We were running from the old school.
Yeah, cool, man.
Yeah, well, you can imagine, it's a Grand Prix weekend, so the main garages are full and the support garages are full of F2. So, we just had to, or we were sent to wherever we were sent to run from.
Holy crap, that's so cool, though, man.
Yeah.
One of only 3 drivers in the world with the current McLaren contract. That's very cool.
Yeah, that's pretty bonkers.
Very cool to throw into a party conversation.
Well, the guy that runs the program is that's pretty amazing.
You've made it. You've made it onto the front page of Autosport magazine.
Yeah. Well, the car has. I just happened to be in it.
You appear to be in it though.
Yeah. That's happened a couple of times now with that car and a V10 as well, actually. But this was Autosport doing a bit of a piece on McLaren. But yeah, that's I've actually got that on the wall at home.
Yeah, I bet you have.
It's pretty amazing.
I like some of the footage that you've sent. Is this another one? This is another one.
Yeah, that's the other Autosport that made it onto the front cover.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. But look,
The photo shoot from this is amazing, though.
Yeah.
Is that Goodwood?
No, that's Pembrey.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but it's quite hard to drive these cars slowly.
Yeah,
behind a van.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all part of these jobs, though, isn't it?
Yeah. They sound so beautiful, though.
Oh, the V10s are incredible. They are just incredible. The sound, but again, you've got to remember this period, the V10s, there wasn't the engine restrictions that there are now. So they would go to a race with, I think at some point it was like 8 engines on heat, or 8 engines in the garage and a couple on heat ready to go. And
really, yeah.
And they were built to do a race. That was it, no more.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult now to run these cars, even when you down tune them. You can't turn a 300-kilometre engine into a 3,000-kilometre engine.
Yeah.
It's got a life, and it's a Formula One car. Whether it's just because it's running now in a sort of a heritage department, it's still a Formula One car. It's still a complicated car to run, and requires a huge amount of effort from the team to keep these cars alive. But chap that oversees it now is a guy called Piers Thine, who's COO at McLaren, and he's hugely enthusiastic about it, as is Indy and Zach, I believe. So it's a fantastic department, and to see these cars all coming back to life and running again, and some customers owning them and bringing them out on days with McLaren support is just. It's amazing. Yeah, that noise, that sound, it's huge.
Yeah, I mean that's. I think I often say to people, until you've actually stood, or when you've actually stood on the top of Bridge Corner and heard, a McLaren Honda come underneath you and a Williams Renault come underneath you, and the resonance that it makes through your body. It's not just the noise, but the actual resonance, like a jet fighter coming underneath you. Yeah. It's stunning. And you managed to do a bit of distraction here. Was this last year?
This was last year. This was out in Bahrain, just doing a quick shakedown under the lights, which was really cool, actually. The Grand Prix was on, and Valtteri just happened to be there ready to take a picture, I think, with his the rest of his team as I came back in. So kind of photobombed them a little bit, I guess. But yeah, again, another pinch yourself moment of driving. I mean, in this case, that's a Lewis Hamilton 2008 championship winning car.
Amazing.
I had to give it up on race day to David Coulthard, but I can take that. But yeah, it's
talking about pinch yourself moments. I think you know what's going to come up next.
It's not one of my best pictures, to be honest.
It's kind of what this. It sounds stupid, but it's glamorous, and we've obviously talked about the glamour side of things, and maybe there is a bit of rose tinted spectacles on it, but partway through this happened. I actually don't know what happened. I know you've probably told me, but you give us a bit of a lowdown.
Don't know what happened.
The ups and downs of life, I suppose.
So yeah, this was the British Grand Prix, or just after the British Grand Prix 2020. So through the Grand Prix, we had quite a few motorhomes on hire, but I just wasn't feeling great. I was short of breath, and if I took 10 paces, I was having to stop and pant a little bit, and I just put it down to a bug, a virus or whatever. But it wasn't lifting, and we got through to the end of the Grand Prix, and it was due to go straight to Austria for the next Grand Prix with the motorhomes. And my sister's a nurse, and she said, look, let me just take you to the local surgery, just to get some antibiotics, whatever, just let's just check it out. So she forced me to go down there, and I went down with Linda, my wife, who at this point is pretty heavily pregnant with Charlotte, our daughter. And so I walked into the into the surgery and waited for the doctor, and anyway he came out and he put a stethoscope on me and blah blah blah, and I told him what the symptoms were, and he just looked at me deadpan. He said, right, okay, I'm going to call an ambulance, I'm going to put you on an ECG. He said, I think you may have had a heart attack, I'm not sure, but you've got a really strong heart murmur. And I looked at him and I just thought, oh, very funny, you know, ha ha ha, good joke, happy days, you know, this is all pretty funny. Where's my antibiotics? I'll be on my way. And he's like, no, I'm deadpan serious, yeah. And so what had happened is there's a valve called the mitral valve in the heart, and there's tendons that operate the valve, and the tendons had snapped. So the valve was flailing. So that meant that my heart was putting the blood in, pumping, but it was pumping the blood into my lungs, which is why I was short of breath, because I was slowly drowning myself, basically. Wow. And I hadn't had a heart attack. I had no heart problem. I still have no heart problem. I had no heart problems whatsoever. What I had was a valve that the tendon snapped on. So I was taken straight that day into Milton Keynes Hospital, where I spent, I think, 2 weeks. They wouldn't let me go home. I mean, I don't think I realised how serious it was looking back on it. I think they humour you a little bit, because I was saying, well, look, you know, I feel all right, I'll go home, then call me back in when I've got to have the job done. And they're like, oh, well, you know, maybe it's best to stay here. But it turns out that, you know, if it had failed like slightly more, then I was in pretty decent trouble. Well, I think pretty decent trouble as it was. Then I got transferred over to Oxford to the cardiac unit there, where they went straight in and sort of full up open heart surgery.
Was that the Radcliffe or Churchill? Was it?
Yeah, Radcliffe, I think. Yeah. And so I had to have the valve basically repaired, and new Kevlar tendons stitched into it, and
amazing.
Yeah, so no, it was great. So
were you thinking expense when you heard Kevlar?
Yeah.
I've used Kevlar things before. They're very expensive.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm bionic, I guess. So,
Wow.
But I got to say, so whilst this is going on, obviously I'm working for McLaren, and I think, well, everything's over. You know, it's this is it. It's the end. And I spoke to Indy and told him everything that was going on, and the fact that it wasn't, you know, a heart failure as such, it was a valve failure. It's just, you know, it just happens to be a pretty decent operation to resolve it. I can fully recommend not having it done. Having your rib cage cut in half is bloody painful. So Indy was amazing. McLaren were incredible. They were like, okay, well, we don't need to shake anything down for a bit. When, you know, keep us in the loop. Let us know what's going on, you know, make sure everything's right. And anyway, 11 weeks after heart surgery, I was in a Formula One car again. Which, looking back on it, was a bit bonkers.
Yeah.
But I think I needed to prove it to myself as much as anything else.
Yeah.
And now everything's back to normal. But
it gives you a target. That really puts it into perspective, doesn't it?
Well,
when I said to Nicola about it, she was like, good God.
The day I was operated on, was my wife Linda was in Northampton hospital giving birth to Charlotte. So, I mean, the timings of it couldn't have been worse, really.
Yeah.
I mean, bless her, she was waiting for a phone call from the surgeon to say that I was out and still alive, whilst trying to give birth. And my operation, which should have been 4 to 5 hours, ended up being 8 to 9 hours, I think. So they did it the first time and it wasn't correct, so I had to go back onto bypass, and they had to, I think the tendons that they'd stitched in were too short on the first attempt, so they had to unpick that, put in longer tendons, and then take back off a bypass and make sure everything's correct. And so what should have been a 5-6 hour ended up being sort of twice the amount of time. So Linda hadn't heard anything from me because I hadn't come out of surgery, and she was.
And you'd have been completely knocked out, I'm guessing.
I wasn't back in for another couple of days, because you finish the surgery and they keep you sedated and in intensive care for another 12 hours or whatever before you're woken up. So I'm oblivious to any of this. And then I've got to say the first sort of 3 days afterwards as well was, I don't have a lot of recollection. I don't remember this picture. To
Wow.
be honest. But Tramadol, fantastic.
Yeah, I recommend that to anyone.
Yeah, but that, you can see that little cushion sort of behind the baby there. That's what they call a cough cushion.
Oh.
So when you've had your rib cage cut in half, there's this constant feeling that everything's going to fall out. So you can't cough, you can't sneeze, you can't yawn because it's so painful. So that cushion is to wrap around like this with your arms if you need to do anything, so you don't feel like the front of you is going to fall out. But
so actually, driving a Formula One car to this has actually just seemed a lot less daunting.
yeah, as I say, I can't recommend going through it, but if you have to. It's
well, it puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then, like you said, 11 weeks later, you're back out in.
11 weeks later, back in a form. Not this one, but yeah, back in a car. But this was pretty incredible. So Piers made this happen. So if you think for the heritage side of McLaren to carry on, that's Piers. They need to run hybrid cars, basically, because otherwise you finish at 2012. 2013 was the first hybrid car. So in order this is part of that strategy, is to be able to drive a hybrid car. So this was that's Phil, the engineer. Yeah.
So what year is this car then?
That's 2022.
2020. So it's like basically a modern F1 car.
Yeah, that's what they call a TPC car, testing previous car. So all of the Formula One teams have a TPC car. So I drove it here. I only did, I think, 3 or 4 laps, and then Pato Award was in it.
Cool, man.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, again, you just look at that and can't believe it's real in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Again, leaving the pits, amazing.
Privileged.
Tyre warmers off.
This is it's another one of those worries. Please just leave the pits. Just get out. Just don't stall. Don't go anti-stall. Just let's just leave smoothly, please. Yeah, just clicked into gear there.
How do they feel, the hybrid cars, compared to the 1990s stuff?
So, speed-wise, acceleration-wise, I would say doesn't feel hugely different to the the V10, the V8 cars. Where it's mind-blowingly different is the ground effect, the brakes, the corner speed. I mean, you've driven a lot at Silverstone, so COPS is a brake and a downshift in anything. Well, it's flat in 8th in that. I didn't do that, but it is, Pato driving it, or, the following day in the drive, flat in 8th gear through COPS. I mean, Maggots, flat through Maggots, flat through the first part of Beckett's, a little lift for the left, just down a couple of gears into the right and flat. The cornering speed and the brake, just, at Stowe, if you're driving the car properly, you're turned into the corner before you're braking.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. That's amazing.
It's mind-bending, really. The potential of the car is just incredible.
Yeah.
And this is perhaps someone, for people that don't drive racing cars or watch Formula One, I don't think there's an understanding of just how strong and how fit the drivers are to do 60, 70 laps in these cars, with the strength in the neck and, the forces on your body.
Yeah.
Are just incredible. I mean, I can do 5 laps before I've lost my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, for this test, I didn't do many laps. We were a bit late, so there was things happened earlier in the day, so it was a little bit late out, so it wasn't a problem. But we'd already put into the cockpit little bullets that you can rest your head on, if you need to.
Yeah. Just going to help you through the day.
Yeah. I was never due to do a huge amount in it. I think I was due to do, 10 laps. It ended up being 3 or 4 just because we were late out at the end of the day. But yeah, for what we needed to do to sign off on the hybrid cars, it was incredible. But to drive something like that, that's as close to
the very latest.
I mean, again,
it's very special.
Incredibly special.
Yeah, count on one hand number of people that have had an opportunity to do that who wasn't a full-blown, full-time F1 driver. Just bringing it up to date. So you mentioned that the next car you're going to be driving. Now, you haven't seen this footage, and I'm going to bring it up because you're going to be driving Senna's car from 1993, his last race with McLaren, which is quite special, and this footage is pretty cool.
Yes, you did a good job. I think
Senna's record-breaking lap is a powerful reminder of what the team will be losing.
It's sad. Ayrton's been with us a long time. He's certainly one of the best racing drivers I've ever come across, if not the best. And he'll be missed, particularly when he puts that yellow helmet on and gets in the car. You know that whenever that happens, the guys out there doing a fantastic job for you.
Well, it'd be very, very strange strapping somebody else in for a change.
Gary is still with us, and Gary looks after us now, straps us in the car. Amazing.
Bryce never changes. You always know where you are with him. And it's always been our trump card.
never know he may come back.
That's
Yes, it is sad. It is sad. It is emotional. I try not to think that it will be the last time.
Joe Ramirez. And there's another bit of footage I found, which is the same car. This is very cool. This is after his so that footage I think was after qualifying, I think.
Yeah.
And this footage is after the race that he's just won.
Wow.
And that was his last win.
Amazing.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, that car is now pretty close to being ready to be shaken down. So it's come out of storage. It's gone through the Heritage workshops. It's a pretty complicated car because that's the first year of active ride height. So it's not, there's a lot going on with that car. So the hydraulic system's incredibly complex, and I think it's quite difficult to bring them back to life. But that car's pretty close now, and we're going to shake it down fairly shortly. But that will be the first time that car's driven since that race in Australia. So when we bring that out, it's going to be pretty.
Yeah, that's pretty special, isn't it? Yeah, Senna's last win.
Yeah,
last time it turned a wheel was when he'd won.
Yeah.
Went back to Parc Ferme, has been mothballed ever since.
Yeah. Well, it was a different ethos with Ron. I think Ron Dennis didn't have any intention for any of these cars to run again after they raced. So but obviously that's a different sort of mindset now with the strategy at McLaren.
You want to get the cars back out again.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Rob, thanks for giving us your time. It's really appreciated, and it's mega to see you and
You too.
coming round and SilverstoneRV.com.
Yes.
We should make sure we plug that.
Yeah.
If you want a motorhome,
And if we can bring back the Silverstone Minibus Grand Prix, if Verge is up for it, and John Pratt and all of the guys back in that.
Yeah, we'll have a word with Silverstone. I'm not sure if a lot of the circuit is remaining, but I'm sure we can make up parts of the circuit.
I think we made it up at that time anyway, and then if we finish off with a pit stop challenge on a Formula First, that'd be good. And
Yeah, Formula
no,
first pit stop. Oh my God, with a coat hanger and some knitting needles, of course.
That's it. Or if you were cheating, you'd nip into the workshop and get a buzz gun.
Yeah, you were like the bet. You'd win that every single corporate day.
Well, you worked out very quickly that if your team won, you got a decent tip as a rule. So it was pretty important to win. But no, it's great to reminisce and
Yeah, we've done 2.5 hours. So
God, really. After telling
and I'm
you
sure
that
your bladder is.
After telling you that Verge's one was far too long.
We'll make some snippets out of it. I should just add at this point, I suppose I should do my sort of pitch at the end. That it's like, subscribe if you like it. That's I suppose in a way that's what I'm doing this for. Try and keep this channel alive, keep the memories alive, and and speak to people. So if you like it, subscribe. If you don't.
Yeah. I mean, that's it, isn't it? Just chipping in at the end, I was talking to Anthony about this before. There's bits, I think, of all of these that people will find interesting and bits that they won't. So if you're from that period, then it'll be interesting. If not, it's not. But yeah.
Yeah. Top man. Thanks, Rob.
Cheers.
I'll see if I press stop on the video now.